tonight we're going to have a debate on some trending national issues. And this is our Friday night debate. We want to say welcome, welcome, welcome to all our viewers on Facebook. In a special way, we want to say welcome to Dr. Kulah. Dr. Kulah, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you again for having me, Dennis. I look forward to a very healthy debate with one that will allow our leadership in Liberia to see that those on and off their side, so to speak, are looking for the best of Liberia at heart. And I hope we gather something positive from these discussions. Thank you again.
Thank you. Next, who is joining us tonight is Mr. Wilmot Kunney. He's the founder and executive director of LEPA. Mr. Kunney, welcome to Focus on Liberia. And when I say LEPA, that's the Liberian Diaspora Political Action Committee. Mr. Kunney, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm happy to be here again. And also, as expressed by Dr. Kulah, I also look forward to a very fruitful debate. We also hope to hear from those who may have a different view on events in our country to put their best solutions out, because essentially we all believe that we want the same good things for Liberia. So maybe by putting their views out, by putting their suggestions out, we can all form a national consensus that will move the country forward.
Thank you, thank you. In a special way, we want to welcome all our viewers across the globe. This is Focus on Liberia. Every Friday, we have a debate Friday. We debate national and other issues right here on Focus on Liberia. Tonight, our debate is on current trending issues in Liberia. If you follow the news in Liberia, there are issues trending, and we're going to have a debate. And the style tonight is a version of the Lincoln Douglas style debate. And in this debate, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to read a statement, and the two panelists are going to respond to it one at a time for 2 minutes. After the first 2 minutes, after responding to the question, then they have another 2 minutes for rebuttal. After the rebuttal, they have another 2 minutes each for questions and answer. That is, they will ask each other question. At the end of their questioning, one question each, then I, as the moderator, will ask one question to each of them or to just one of them based on my own discretion. So in one segment, I can ask Mr. Kunney a question and don't ask Dr. Kulah. That is my discretion as moderator. It is in no way showing that I'm taking any side. So this is how we're going to start. And we're going to start with a practice. So so I'm going to read a question. I'm going to make a statement and I will let each of you to respond. Okay? Statement. Focus on Liberia is by far the best informative news organization in the world.
Focus on Liberia is by far the most informative news organization in the diaspora for Liberians.
Thank you. So, Mr. Kunney, you have 2 minutes.
Focus on Liberia is one of the most informative news platforms for Liberians in the diaspora, not for the world. And as much as Focus on Liberia is doing great, we have to be very careful how we make these kind of comparisons when we're talking about the world and when we're using absolute adjective as the most. So I think Focus on Liberia is doing the best that it can do to inform Liberians in the diaspora and at home. Okay.
Right.
2 minutes over, man. I'm looking at my clock.
Then at that time, then Mr. Kulah will have a chance to rebut what he just said, and you have another 2 minutes to rebut what he said. After that, you have question for Mr. Kunney and then question for Dr. Kulah. After that, I can ask questions. At the end, if we go through all our 7 points, then we open the phone lines up for questions. And we want to encourage our viewers tonight, we'll only have questions, not comments. So if you want to talk about, if you want to make a comment tonight is not the time for you to call. Post your comments on Facebook, and if we have chance, we'll read it. With that, we did a coin toss, and Dr. Bottom Kulah, you go first. And here is the statement. The failed extradition attempt by the government of Liberia of Mr. Henry Pedro Costa by the government of Liberia was embarrassing and has raised the profile of Mr. Henry P. Costa.
I do agree in totality with that statement, that the failed extradition by the government of Liberia of Mr. Henry P. Costa was indeed an embarrassment to the Liberian government, and it has indeed raised his profile, not only nationally, but internationally. Mr. Costa has been heard on the BBC focused on Africa. I believe a portion of the BBC News carried the incident in Sierra Leone. And of course, he's been on VOA Daybreak or Good Morning Liberia or Good Morning Africa, whatever it's called, that Daybreak Africa that James Butty hosts from Washington, D.C. It's raised his profile to the extent that Mr. Costa was brave enough to say to the government of Liberia, he's coming back to Monrovia in May, and he looks forward to being arrested when he arrives in Monrovia. So indeed, this government continues to embarrass itself for whatever reason, continues to make the most asinine and very uncalculated moves in terms of going after a man for a laissez-passer, which they claim was fraudulent. Now they're throwing other charges in there and saying that he tried to lead an insurrection. Where and when? So I think the government of Liberia is very embarrassed, and it looks very bad.
Mr. Kunney, same statement. You want me to read that again?
No, I got his statement. I just gonna totally disagree with the assessment of Dr. Kulah. I don't think
this first time you only responded to my statement. You're going to have time to rebut.
Okay, I totally disagree. Well, the statement, I totally disagree with it. The process, the issues surrounding Mr. Costa, I don't know what additional popularity he may have gained that, he didn't already gain. I mean, interview with the BBC, interview with Focus on Africa. These are all things that Mr. Costa has done. So how one quantify that to relate to the fact that they're making more popular than what he already was is something that is quite debatable. But we all know the issue of these extraditions, they take many forms, they take many forms. Besides the incidents of actual criminality, extradition of individuals with political views, with political activities associated with that is always a difficult process. It is always a difficult process. I am a beneficiary of asylum. I think the Sierra Leone government, they did rightly, by allowing Mr. Costa to free travel to his destination, because as an asylum seeker, I would default on the side where if anyone alleges that his life is in danger, whether true or not, I would default to the side of that kind of fear that is being expressed. But now that Mr. Costa has decided to return to Liberia, I think that would be, one of the best things that he can do to face whatever allegations the government has against him. I would caution, if he truly believes that his life is in danger, I would caution for him not to return, but it is his decision, it is his liberty to return to the country that he's claiming that his life is in danger. That would be his choice. But there's no embarrassment to the government. I mean, these are political issues, and the consideration, the decision-making that goes into them are always political in nature.
Thank you. Dr. Kulah, your rebuttal.
Our rebuttal is simply this. Mr. Kunney wants to be in denial, like the government and its operatives are in denial, that they're very embarrassed. They positioned this to the Liberian people and a lot of their propagandists like Michael Gilman and others that Costa would be delivered to Liberia the next day at RIA. And their plans was to humiliate Costa in front of everybody so that there will be nobody brave enough to do what Costa has been trying to do, raise the issues in the political sphere by bringing protests and whatnot. When that failed, they were embarrassed. When Costa was then interviewed by the VOA and the BBC and was carried on those radio stations, it raised his profile very high. And the reason it raised his profile, because now you're not just having an international incident between Sierra Leone and Liberia. Now you've got the rest of the world involved. Now you've got members of Congress in the United States listening and getting involved. Now you have his school community involved. You have Delaware involved. Perhaps the governor of Delaware will get involved. And all these people Costa can use to get the issue about Liberia out in a bigger way. So it raises his profile. Not only does it raise his profile, it makes it such that when he gets ready to go home, Costa is not going to go home by himself. He'll probably be escorted by Congress people and human rights people. So if Mr. Weah and his people think this is some sort of joke, if they think this is some sort of situation that they can play with and laugh at, they have forgotten history. They've forgotten the fact that Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was chased out of Liberia. They've forgotten the fact that Taylor was chased out of Liberia. They've forgotten the fact that a lot of political advocates have been chased out of countries, and those advocates in turn have been seen by the greater world, by the international world, by the US, by people who believe in human rights, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and others. They've hailed those individuals as people wanting to bring peace, freedom, reconciliation, freedom of movement, and all the tenets of democracy to their country. So it's raised Costa's profile very high, my brother, and you know what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
Dennis.
Mr. Kunney, your rebuttal.
Yeah, I'm laughing. You know, the kind of extreme imagination that people seem to have about events in Liberia, that a political activist who fled Liberia, that he would be returned to Liberia by a band of United States Congress people, by the international community. Again, I keep warning our people. I keep warning our people of people that are trying to play on their sentiments. Yes, there are a lot of people that fled countries. I mean, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf fled Liberia. Was she returned to Liberia by a U.S. congressional delegation? Let us stop playing with the minds of our people in this way. Things don't happen this way. You know, Oliver Tambo left South Africa. Was he returned to South Africa by a United Nations delegation? Mr. Costa will return to Liberia at the time he feels ready to return. And I don't see, you know, any kind of international incident about the international community getting involved. If Mr. Costa returns to Liberia, the Liberian government may decide to go after him on the charges for which they think that he is prosecutable. They can make all of that decision. I don't see a big lot of a huge incident here, the embarrassment here. We can be reminded that Ellen Johnson Sirleaf saw the extradition request of Ellen Cochran from the United States. Was that an embarrassment to the government? Governments all the time seek Charles Taylor there was an extradition on Charles Taylor. What I'm saying is these requests, except in the case of actual criminal conduct, dealing with the extradition of people with political motivation is a tricky thing between countries. And so I don't know where the celebration is coming from. Any Liberian in Mr. Costa's circumstances will have gotten the same treatment that he has received. It is not an embarrassment. It raises no profile other than what he already has.
Thank you. Do you have a question for Dr. Kulah?
Well, the question I have for Dr. Kulah is that where is he getting all the indication from that, you know, the next return would be, you know, United States Congress and U.S. Marshals and the Delaware National Guard and all of these people would be.
Let's not try to be dismissive.
I'm asking you a question. Just answer the question.
Hold on, Dr. Kulah, let him finish.
No, You made a point. We will be returned to Liberia. There will be this congressional delegation.
Is your question over?
Yeah, it's over.
Okay.
If it is not mere propaganda, where is he getting this?
It's not propaganda. Don't add any other thing. Just speak to what I just said. I said there's a possibility.
Go ahead.
I said there's a possibility that if Costa goes home with the conditions as they are right now, he could go home with a congressional delegation taking him there. Now, your question should have simply been, why do you think?
No, don't define my question. Just answer my question.
You have to come in with all this stuff about
Dr. Kulah, answer the question.
Said Delaware National Guard. You see, you like to belittle things and you like to play with things in Liberia too much. Y'all play too much.
You express a wishful dream.
Hold on.
Here's the point.
Hold on, Mr. Kunney. Dr. Kulah, go ahead, answer the question. We don't have time.
Here's the point I'm making about a congressional delegation. If you guys remember quite recently, I believe it was either Senator Chris Coons or one of the senators wrote a letter to Liberia indicating that they should not touch any of the political activists and give them the freedom to do what they need to do to protest. It has reached that far. Congressional people are watching. Congressional people are listening. And the way things happen, and Mr. Kunney, I don't know why you guys keep fooling these guys in CDC, in the government. The way things happen in this country is once it reaches that profile, where Congress is not paying attention, where certain people in Congress are not paying attention, they don't only keep an eye on your nation, but they keep an eye on that individual that your nation is trying to prosecute. So I believe that Costa will be invited to Congress to present on Liberia. And when he does present on Liberia, knowing the kind of person, the charismatic person that Costa is, he will gather people that will like him and people that will want to ensure that he's safe when he goes back home. So there is a possibility that a congressional delegation could take him home. That is what I'm saying. This is not no propaganda. I'm not like you guys who think you can run that country with propaganda and lies. That's not what I'm doing. I'm telling you what this country stands for.
Thank you, Dr. Kulah. You're 2 minutes over. Now is your turn to ask Mr. Kunney a question.
Mr. Kunney, given the fact that this government had their propagandists jubilating that they were going to bring Costa back the next day, they had their Solicitor General out and whatnot, that Costa was now a fugitive, and they set up this whole scenario where he would be returned back 5 o'clock the next day. Why don't you think it's an embarrassment or like an egg on their face? Why can't you just admit that that's what it is?
Because unlike you, Dr. Kulah, I know the activities that are associated with political activists. I know that when political activists leave their country of birth and go to another country, it is not just a simple decision to give somebody a win by returning them to their home country. You know, that you continue with your wishful dream. The reason why I'm now wishful has
tell your people in CDC that
the reason why I'm now wishful as you is because I understand these things better. I understand the international ramification around these things. When you advance a position, when they challenge you, you retreat. Now you've retreated from congressional delegation, carrying him to Liberia to a congressional address. Everything is possible. But I'm telling you, it's all wishful thinking. Political extradition is a difficult process. Many governments initiate that and they fail once the individual can claim that their life is in danger. It is a simple international protocol. So what a big embarrassment you're talking about. You can go to any border of any country and claim that you are in danger. That country will give you the right to present the evidence that you are in danger. So it's not a question of what supporters or what supporters of government say or what they don't say. I'm quoting international protocol to you. From the moment you assert that your life is in danger by international law, you are given the opportunity to present that evidence to remain in the safety of where you feel comfortable. So you're creating all of these schemes that there's going to be a kumbaya and there's going to be a marching band of U.S. Marshal returning the hero home. You know, I mean, you people are misinforming the people, and we're not dismissed. It's not being dismissed. So we just try to point out the misinformation. Look, the situation in our country is hard. The challenges are difficult. And we will resist people feeding our people false information that raises their hope on things that are not realistic.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kulah.
So why didn't you tell the CDC boys that?
Hold on,
I'm
Dr.
not in the CDC government.
Hold on, everybody. I'm muting you. Hold on, stop. We have a format here. Let's go by the format. When the time comes to engage, we're going to do that. I want my audience to enjoy this, and it's going very well. So now it's time for me to ask you both questions. I'll start with you, Mr. Kunney. Has a security person that Mr. Henry Costa was wanted, he was supposed to visit it, go with his lawyer to report for questioning. How did he leave? Don't you see that, I mean, not even at the border that they got him, isn't that an embarrassment to a security system that was so much focused on this advocate or this activist?
Well, first of all, let us be careful with the kind of language that we use here. Up to Mr. Costa leaving the country, I don't think there was any information from the government that he was a wanted person. Mr. Costa could have been a person of interest in an ongoing investigation. There is a difference between a person of interest. There is a difference between the subject of an investigation. There is a difference between a criminal. All of these things carry specific investigative and legal meaning. So at that point, he was a person of interest in an investigation, required to report to the authorities for the continuation of that investigation. In that circumstances, there is no protective barrier. You've not been charged for anything. What is relied on is your word of honor that you will cooperate with the investigators. So the way it is being presented as if to say he was under some government's protective watch, and then all of a sudden there was a weakness of the security and he fled, that's just not true. He was not being arrested. He was not placed in any security holding for that process, but he was a person of interest called to voluntarily, he could have rejected the voluntary reporting to the immigration office. He could have done that. But in investigation, some of these techniques are applied. Based on somebody's reconnaissance, you can tell them, you can come until we can conclude the investigation. And it's like giving your word of honor to that person. So I don't see a failure of security, actually.
Right. And look, if you can see the picture that I'm presenting, there's a first Facebook post that looks like Mr. Costa is holding a police radio. And people are saying that he was intercepting the police communication, and that's how he was tipped off and he needed to escape. You let put on your security hat and tell me what's going on in that picture.
I'm putting on my security hat and I'm putting on my political hat. Again, all of these things, all of these reportage, all of these things could be the result of Mr. Costa trying to raise his morale, raise his popularity. Look, people, again, as a security person, I'm very much familiar with these things. Very much familiar. It's like Alan Cochran leaving Liberia and say, oh, Brandon Samuka gave me all the rundown and this is how I have to escape. You're leaving, you're playing politics. You're trying to show, first of all, you're trying to disinform, you're trying to disinform the public, not only the public, but to sow seed of confusion against the security forces. So I know all of these matters. Nobody knows for a fact as to whether what you were holding was a police radio. Nobody know that. You can hold anything as a police radio. It's the same way the people saw boxes laying down to the free people in broad daylight. They say the boxes are our money, and people believe that. Again, this is the gullibility we are trying to fight. We need to educate our people to know better. The fact that somebody who a radio does not make it a police radio. It does not make it an immigration radio.
Thank you.
So I don't see any. And with regard to him leaving the country, we all know Liberia has a very porous border. Anybody can cross at any point. It's not like you have a 24/7 corridor of the border from point to point. Anybody can leave Liberia at any point, at any location.
Thank you. Dr. Kulah, your question. Mr. Henry Costa was not extradited from Sierra Leone to Liberia because he told the people that he feared for his life when returned. I see you talking about Mr. Costa returning to Liberia under probably an escort from the US. Wouldn't that defeat the very reason why he resisted the extradition in the first place?
No, it
Why
wouldn't.
not?
Usually in a situation like this where a political activist leaves his country for fear that he's going to be killed by either government operatives or what have you, when that person decides to go home, and in a situation like Costa's, I would say he would be smart enough to make sure that he's escorted by human rights people and others that can guarantee his safety, or make some sort of arrangement to guarantee his safety from the government of Liberia, where they're on record before he goes home. That's what he would do. And that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm making the point that Costa is not just going to get up and go home knowing that he's going into danger. There will either be certain arrangements made before he goes into that danger. So Mr. Kunney can sit here and try to belittle it and dismiss it as much as possible. But the fact remains that we had Matthew Innes killed, and instead of the police taking him to the mortuary and having an investigation open, they took him straight to the funeral home. And there was no investigation. We had nothing to come out of that. So there's been a lot of killings that have happened like that in Liberia. So Costa isn't wrong to say he's afraid for his life, and going back and making arrangements before going back to ensure his safety wouldn't take that away. I mean, it exists.
Yeah, under asylum law, then you no longer qualify for asylum if you can return.
But who said he's filing for asylum?
Okay.
Man wants to return. Who said he's filing for asylum? He said
Dennis.
he said he left his country because he was told that he will stay there, he would be killed.
All right.
That's a legitimate fear.
All right. Thank you.
Dennis, before we move on, and that's the credibility of the issue, you know. Like I say,
hold
on, Mr. Kunney, I give you 30 seconds, and then Mr. Kulah.
That's the credibility of the issue. And as much as I'm an asylum seeker and I try to default to the position of asylum, the fact that someone who has claimed that his life is in danger is openly declaring to go back to the same place of danger undermines the credibility of the story. Either there is no threat, this is a made-up thing, you know, or I mean, it's just a propaganda. How do you go back to the place where you say people there to kill you? It undermines the story. The story is not true.
Okay.
I would never, there is no rational person will return to a place where you claim that you're facing imminent death. No rational person will do that.
That's not true.
Mr.
Kulah did that.
Dr. Kulah, you will have your chance to say what you want to say. Let him finish. So you have your 30 seconds to respond. Dr. Kulah. That
is not true. There's so many political activists that have gone back home into dangerous areas. Aung San Suu Kyi went back home. Helen Johnson Sirleaf went back home. Taylor went, but he went the wrong way. You know, people do it all the time. Now, you guys are—
Dr. Kulah, let me call you to the point. Taylor did not go back home when Doe was in power. No.
Dennis, you see what he's doing?
Go ahead. Go ahead. He's muted.
You know, people do it all the time. Okay. So I can say I left the area because I was afraid of being killed. However, I want to go back home. I will go back home. Okay. Now I can make arrangements to go back home. It doesn't mean I'm filing asylum. Just because Mr. Kunney filed asylum doesn't mean everybody wants to file asylum. But I can say I left. I ran away for fear of my life. And it's
all right. Thank you. Thank you.
Dennis, quickly, you know, Dr. Kulah always accuses people of propaganda. He is the chief propagandist here. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf did not return to Liberia when Samuel Doe was still in power. You trying to, you know, to just feel— No, she didn't.
Go put her in jail.
She did not return to Liberia when Samuel Kanye Doe that she— No, Dr. Kulah, wait.
After she made this—
Go ahead, finish.
Oh God. When Ellen Johnson Sirleaf fled from Samuel Kanye Doe, she did not return to Liberia when Doe was in power. When Charles Taylor fled from Samuel Kanye Doe, he did not return to Liberia when Doe was in power. We owe it to the public to present factual information. You come here, you spew propaganda, falsehood, and you accuse other people of doing the same thing. I'm telling you, if you say you come from a place where your life is in imminent danger, you will not return there until the circumstances that create the danger is removed.
All right.
That's the
Thank
point
you.
I'm making.
Thank you. For the last time, I want for Dr. Kulah to respond on this issue and we move to the next.
Not necessarily. You can leave a place that your life is in imminent danger. You can come to the land of the free, and you can set up all the systems in place to make sure you go back home and face whatever law they say they want to bring to you. So Costa can set up all the conditions properly right to go back home and face them.
Like what?
Then
Condition
there's
like
no
what?
threat to kill him. Then the threat to kill him.
He can get the president of Liberia to go on record and say that if anything happens to him, he, President Weah, will be responsible. He can do that.
No, I
don't think ECOWAS and the international community to get involved to make sure they get that from the president of Liberia.
If he returns to Liberia, there is no threat. There is no threat of killing him.
Right.
The threat is no longer credible.
That's for you, Kunney, who filed asylum.
Okay. No, you don't know what he filed.
He said he filed asylum. He said it.
Okay.
I said, as someone who believes in the asylum process, you always spewing half truth. I said, as someone who believes in the asylum process, I always lean to people who file asylum.
Okay.
Dr. Kulah, you got to learn to be truthful. Why are you always on this propaganda?
You filed asylum. I was just going by what I thought.
Let's move on. Let's move on. We have so many issues here, and when we open the phone lines, I believe our viewers will ask questions on that issue. So let's move on and get it let's go to our next issue. Okay. Few days ago, we saw a letter circulating on the internet, purported letter from Vice President Jewel Howard Taylor. But here's my statement that I want you both to respond to. The reported letter from VP Jewel Howard Taylor complaining about budgetary allocation and other benefits of office speak more about the vice president than the president. Mr. Kunney, you go first.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not going to get between what is between the president and the vice president, because I simply don't know. Other people who claim to know, they may come and put their conjecture and other things like that. But I believe that if there are issues that affect the vice president office, she wants to raise those issues, and she's raising the issues in the most legitimate format, I don't have a problem with that. What I do know, I believe there is good relationship between the president and the vice president, contrary to what many people believe. You know, today the birthday greetings of the vice president I saw came from the office of the president. So in Liberia, there are challenging times. We politicize everything. You know, somebody going to the market is politics. The vice president is raising concern regarding her office. It has nothing to do, in my opinion, of the relationship that exists between she and the president. The opposition, they might want to capitalize on that and again go on their wishful thinking, what they think is happening. But I think, I mean, like any other person, if your office has a problem, you raise it in the channel that the issue should be raised. And I think that's what she did. It don't point to anything between she and the president. She's not complaining the president. She's complaining about circumstances that regarding the running of her office. So how that linked to the president is actually beyond me. Again, this could be the dream of people in the opposition that would like to see the coalition fracture. I have enormous respect for the vice president as I do with the president. And I think both of them, they have the understanding that they are the two highest executives in the country, and they all know the importance of their relationship. So I'm not going to speculate or extend any speculation to the fact that because the vice president raised issue that would lead to the smooth running of our office, that means now that the vice president is at war with the president. I don't believe that, but you know, other people can draw their own conclusions.
Dr. Kulah.
I can only draw my conclusions based on facts that are in the public domain, whether it be it through recorded statements of the superintendent of Bong County, whether it be it the recorded statement of Mulba Molu, whether it be it when the president of Liberia asked the vice president to make an apology for traveling out of the country without quote unquote telling him, whether it be it when she went to see him and was made to wait for hours on end and did not get an opportunity to see him, whether be it all of the friction that was brought into her party, where one group was trying to remove her and so on and so forth, there has been tension between the president and the vice president for whatever reason that tension exists. And for us to sit here and pretend as if everything is wonderful, that's what I call plausible deniability. That's not really plausible. Okay? The problem here is this. What the VP did, I would have said it speaks more for the president than the VP, but having talked to a friend of mine and he gave me a perspective, I would say it speaks more about both of them. And why do I say that? I say that because a lot of our civil servants have been going without pay for 4, 5, 6 months, okay? And they've still been going to work. Even though the VP, for whatever reason, is being stifled by the executive for some reason or another, and her letter to the legislative branch states that she should have still gone to the opening session, whether she had to use her own money or borrow money to put gas in the car or what have you, go without the proper armored vehicle, go to the opening session, do your duty. If you need to carry somebody's old car to show that you don't have any good cars or whatever, do it silently, quietly, and people will come to you. But other people could use this against her and say, why are you complaining? Everybody else is taking it. Only certain people around the president are enjoying, including the president himself. You know, you need to take it too.
Okay.
But I see it as it speaks about the president. Why is he so intimidated by this lady? This lady, you and her came to the dance. You have her until 2023. If you want to get rid of her in 2023, you can do it. But until then, treat her right. That's how I see it.
Mr. Kunney, your rebuttal.
Yeah, again, like I said, I mean, people can draw their own conclusions, and I mean, it is well within Dr. Kulah's right to do that. Again, I said, I don't find a problem with the vice president raising the proper functioning of office, but at the same time, I don't extend that to the relationship between she and the president. And the vice president is not complaining about pay. The vice president is not complaining about money. I think of everything that I read, the most significant thing that I saw is the issue of security. She's saying that the bulletproof vehicle that is reserved for the vice president is not operable. And just like I've come on this show and argue for the security of the president, you know, I extend the same argument to the vice president. The vice president also is entitled to travel in a secure, in a convenient environment. So let us not portray this thing as the VP asking for remuneration, asking for gas slip, asking for, it's not what the letter is about. And people need to read exactly what the complaint is about. She's not asking for pay. The VP is well aware of the sacrifices that Liberians are undergoing. The office of the president, they are all aware every Liberian is making a sacrifice. So she's not complaining about stipends and other things like that. I think the most significant component of our issue is the fact that, you know, in terms of movement, you know, security in her estimation may not be assured by the fact that these security customized vehicles that were assigned to her may not be operable. That's the major thing I see. And all of the speculations that people have here, the president has not said anything about the VP. The VP has not said anything about the president. Like I said, these two individuals, they know the importance of their office and they have enormous respect for one another. And I think they can manage their relationship. But there is a fantasy the same way there has been all of these fantasies of what will happen, you know, if everything George Weah is removed, the country would be like a, how do you call it, like heavy and other things like that.
Thank you.
I mean, it's not true. I mean, the vice president did what she has to do, and I don't think it speak anything about her nor about the president.
Thank you. Dr. Kulah, your rebuttal.
Mr. Kunney is always in this security mode. He's always in this denial mode. And of everything he read in that letter, the only thing that stuck out to him was the armor car. That lady wrote a letter detailing how her budget was cut, how they're not able to handle basic overhead of her office. And I think it went as far going into the fact that some of her people haven't gotten paid and so on and so forth. Yes, she did mention stuff about the armored car, okay? But there was more detailed in that letter than just the armored car. So for him to chalk it up to just the armored car, that's not true. That's one. Number two, for him to say there's nothing between the VP and the president, it's like we Liberians will always have our head in the sand. Everybody else, even missionaries, can be in Liberia and see the society as it is and know what's going to happen, except for Liberians. We're always in denial. There's obviously some tension between the president and the vice president. I don't know whether it's true that she made some remarks about wanting to be president or what, but ever since she started traveling and exerting herself and not trying to be that parked car like how what's the old man name was, Borka was. She was almost like humiliated and made to apologize. Apologize for what? Why should a VP apologize for traveling when she even had to put out her itinerary that was taken to the mansion and given to the chief of protocol because she wasn't allowed to see the president? You know, so let's stop being in denial and just say what the facts are, that there is obvious tension between the two, and we need to get them to fix it so that they can run the country for the next 4 years. And then if the president decides, like the superintendent was saying, she was being interrogated as to why they gave his Dagbana title to Joe Howard Taylor and all of this, or with what Mobam Mola said, that McGill and Twer want to be on the ticket, and so they want to sideline her and all of that. If y'all want to sideline her, wait until 2023 and sideline her, but don't make her miserable for her to resign. That's not how you treat somebody. She brought you to this dance. She is on this ticket.
Hold on, you were coming. Dr. Kulah, you have any question for Mr. Kunney?
Mr. Kunney, why do you believe that there's nothing there when all of the facts point otherwise? You heard the recording, you heard the VP superintendent, you saw the issue where when she traveled out, she had to put out her itinerary. All of these things that were detailed in the letter, everything that's been coming out in the public sphere, not gossip, but facts. Why are you still in denial?
They are not facts. Well, let me tell you, you claim me are in denial. Maybe what is actually bothering you is my superior understanding of the political process.
Oh,
the vice president and the president, they are in a political relationship. And those of us that have been in this kind of relationship, I mean, politics about conflict and the resolution of conflict. So, I mean, the way people talking about tension as if to say there is a showdown that is willing to happen, I'm telling you that I don't see evidence of that kind of showdown.
Tension equals showdown.
The vice president is someone of enormous integrity. She knows the value of her office. Equally, the president is someone of enormous integrity. But let us not assume that because these people occupy the two most positions, that there may not be situations where there is contrary opinions and differing of opinions, and every little dissension that is seen means that there is an Armageddon between the vice president and the president. That's what I'm speaking about. In any normal relationship, you will have disagreement, you will have tension, even between husband and wife. But to see every little disagreement between husband and wife, and say, oh, this is a divorce issue, this is a divorce issue. That is the syndrome I'm pointing to. You know, the vice president knows exactly what she has to do. The president is aware of his responsibility. I don't give credit. All of these things that is being mentioned here, these things are not official actions of government. Somebody recording is not the official action of the president. Somebody doing secret recording of what's hearsay evidence is, they are not official action of the president. And I've not seen the vice president taking any official action that should disrespect to the president. I've not seen the president taking any official action that should disrespect to the vice president. This is the point I'm making. I'm not saying that there is absolute peace and absolute because in running government is conflict and the resolution of conflicts. Even your own lieutenants, there are areas of disagreement. Even your staff, among your own staff, the idea that the president and the vice president will run that country with all those challenges and will not even see or will not even hear about any dissension is the wishful thinking that is dangerous for the country. It's not healthy for the country.
Thank you. Now your question for Dr. Kulah.
I think
Mr. Kunney, go ahead, ask your question to Dr. Kulah if you have.
Dr. Kulah keeps saying that the action about the VP speaks to the VP character, speak to the president character. I want to ask Dr. Kulah, speak to the president and the VP character in what way? What are the characters? What character are you referring to?
Good question. I said initially I would say that it speaks to the president's character. And it speaks to the president's character in that what he's doing with her, all these little petty things, making her to come on air and apologize because she's traveled out of the country, so-called without telling him, undermining her by cutting her budgetary allotments or not releasing them and so on and so forth. It speaks to his character in that he's very immature. He's very immature. That's how an immature person behaves. Tit for tat. His picture got to be bigger than her on the wall. When they do the billboard, his picture got to be big, how small. All of those, that speaks to his character. Now, when I say speaks to her character, in her not going to the opening would mean that maybe she feels that she should get things. I mean, she ought to get things that's due her when it's due her, instead of making sacrifices that she needs to make. But she's a very mature woman. She's taken a lot over these 2 years. That's one thing I can tell you. She's very mature, very calculating, very smart, very astute woman. I respect her for that.
So
I believe the president is too.
No, he's not.
Dr. Kulah,
Very immature.
what character, what is that kind of character that asks for things that you deserve? You say it speaks to the VP's character, and that character, how do you describe that character if she deserves those things and she's asking for them? What kind of character is that you are trying to paint?
I would say somebody that stands up for themselves, that makes sure that people don't walk over them,
Good thing or bad thing?
Some people can look at it as bad, especially in a patriarchal culture where for a female.
How do you look at it?
How do I look at it?
Yeah.
For me, I would look at it as positive, but some people look at it negative. I think she should stand up for herself. I think she's been taken advantage of. She's been pushed around, and she should stand up for herself.
Mr. Kunney, you are saying even though there is tension, but it's supposed to be because running government is hard. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, because he likes.
Definitely. I mean that there has to be some expectation. There has to be some expectation in a public space as we conduct the affairs of the state. I'm saying that because I'm a former president of ULA. Even as president of ULA, there were areas of disagreement I had with people who were very close to me. So the idea that people are promoting that, any sign of disagreement is an Armageddon between the president and the vice president. That's why I'm dismissing. Now, when it comes to the president, Dr. Kulah is never short of adjectives. But on this program, I've consistently said that for our country to make progress, there are a couple of things we have to do. You have the full legislative power in our country that is not being used. The budget you're talking about, the budget is passed by the legislature. The budget is not passed by the president. They rush to the president on everything. It defeats our very argument that we should weaken the president. The budget is not passed by the president. The budget is not approved by the president. The budget is approved by the very legislature where the vice president works. And if there are people in the executive,
the money, the finance,
if there are people, let me learn. If there are people in the executive that are frustrating the fulfillment of allotments made, the legislature also has the power. They have the oversight power. They have the power of the purse. Basically, what I'm saying, our country will get better if we stop this blame game of everything president. Let us hold other institutions that are much more powerful in a democracy accountable. You can have a legislature and you say budgetary approval are not being honored by an executive employee, and to attribute that all of that to the president is just absurd to me.
Thank you. Now we're moving
absorbed in a.
We are moving on to our next issue.
But Mr. Dr. Kulah, we got to get to, at some point, we got to put our.
We are moving on to the next issue. Let's leave it right there. Let's leave it right there. We are getting to our next issue. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia on our Friday night debate. We have Dr. Barton Kulah and Mr. Wilmot Kunney debating on some trending issues in our country using the Lincoln Douglas style debate. Now to our next issue. I read the question and Dr. Kulah, you're going to respond. The appointment of the new Minister of Agriculture, who is not a member of the ruling coalition. In fact, people have been posting her comments as an opposition. Okay, that shows that we are getting somewhere. Your comment.
That shows that we're either getting somewhere or she's being used as a means to an end. This lady has extensive UN credentials. She's worked for the UN in the past, and she also has a company called Fabra that produces rice and exports it, and they buy rice from local farmers. And I think she's been able to leverage a lot of relationships. And as a result, I think the president and those who did his vetting for once decided it would be smart enough to get somebody like her who could bring to bear her resources, her connections, in order to bring in the monies and the various supply chains to get us where we need to be in terms of agriculture. It's a smart move. However, it's backfiring in its early stages because people within the CDC have now been posting screenshots of her conversations with others on Facebook to say that she's not loyal, she shouldn't be there, and so on and so forth. So let's see how this goes, but I think it's a good choice.
Mr. Kunney.
For once, Dr. Kulah is saying one good thing the president did. So I want to applaud him for that.
This is true. I don't lie.
Dr. Kulah, let me continue. At least for once, he has saying one good thing the president does. But I mean, the president's action actually speak to what the president has been talking all along. The president has always been on that field trying to put the talent and the skill set together that will move the country forward. And he has said that so many times. I mean, this appointment kind of demonstrate that again, that this is where he's going in terms of moving the country forward. I've seen the CV. The CV look impressive, and you know, and I know CVs are very impressive. But the point I want to make is that that appointment is not unique and is not unprecedented on two fronts. I mean, she is not the only eminently qualified person that has been appointed to that ministry. You know, there have been people that have been appointed there, even more qualified than her, or with similar qualifications. But the important thing is the country still continue to face the same problem that it has faced from its founding. We cannot feed ourselves. So while I see the celebration and everything going, let's see how this resume, how this qualification will translate to the country answering one of its major national issues of feeding itself, from the country expanding its agricultural export to generate foreign exchange that will grow the economy. She's not, I mean, this is now our first time at that ministry. Dr. Florence Chinwe was eminently qualified. We had Dr. Chris too. We have all of these people. So for us, for some of us, what we want is result. in as much as I celebrate her appointment, and as much as I believe that the president did the right thing by appointing her, it is now time for the Liberian people to get the result of that wise decision that the president has made. I don't want us to see another eminently qualified Liberian heading the agriculture ministry, and at the end of it, the Liberian people still cannot feed ourselves. If we do that, then the qualifications, this is where people begin to question education. If we cannot use education to solve the problems of our people, then some people begin to even question what kind of education we have.
Thank you. And I don't think we're going to stay long on this. I have a question that I want the two of you to answer. I read the CV, and I don't see anything that any background in agriculture, except for making a business of selling rice. Don't you think this is more political than anything else, because there's no agricultural background whatsoever? Dr. Kulah.
Dennis, I'm glad you brought that up, because I questioned that myself. I saw that and I wondered there was not anything on agriculture there, but I think it could be seen two ways. It could be seen as political, but it could also be seen as practical. And I think what the president kept saying, if I remember, was that he wanted someone at the Ministry of Agriculture that was a practical person. Now, at the time, I was worried because, our new politics is a Facebook politics where a lot of guys go on Facebook and they do their little podcast and talk about what they're doing. So I thought he was going to pick one of these guys that are planting farms and stuff like that. But it just so happened it was her who's been doing this Fabra thing, which is exporting, and it's really big time. I mean, she's really won awards internationally. So I think he wants her to bring that knowledge and leverage the relationship that she has with our farmers in getting our farmers to grow more food that we could have at home and then export the excess, and then also do the same thing with cash crops like cocoa and coffee and whatnot. So I think it's good, even though she doesn't have the agricultural background.
And same question for you, Mr. Kunney, but on top of that, I want to see that since she's in the business of selling rice, do you see some conflict of interest somewhere, down the road?
Not necessarily. And look, yeah, there may not be something there for agriculture for her in her CV, but listen, the issue of agriculture, every Liberian child knows agriculture. This is what we've been taught when we were kids, that the only way we make progress in our country, or one of the only ways we make significant progress in terms of national development, is through agriculture. You don't need a PhD in agriculture to know this basic fact. And sometimes when you make somebody an administrative head of an agency, it may not be your technical knowledge or your academic knowledge in that area, but it may be because of your ability to manage resources, to manage people, to adopt a much more strategic view that will solve major problems. Once you can do that, it doesn't matter whether you have academic training in that area. So again, this is what I'm saying. For me, I'm celebrating the appointment, but I'm maintaining, watch to see what result, because this is not the first time this ministry has had this kind of appointment. All of the people that I mentioned, Dr. Chinwe, Dr. To, even VP Blacker, they all passed through that ministry. And we have not resolved this basic issue of feeding ourselves. We have not resolved that. So for me, it's what kind of policies she will promulgate, it's what kind of programs that she will put into place that will resuscitate the agricultural sector, put our people back on the path of production, put our people on the path of self-sufficiency in food production, cash crop production, that will uplift the economy as we've all been told from the time we were kids. Let us hope that maybe this will be the beginning of the process for us to see this major transformation in this aspect of our economy.
Thank you. Now we go to the next, and we'll open our phone line. After this segment, then we're going to bring on our callers to ask you guys questions. And here is it. Ethnicity and regionalism in Liberian politics have heightened under the Weah presidency than any time in our nation's history. Mr. Kunney, you go first.
Well, for me, at any point in time, we'll be hearing these ethnic charges, and it's true. And I sometimes do agree with Dr. Kulah. Ethnicity is part of our lives. Ethnicity is part of our body politics. It will always be part of that. And as to what measure now that we're using to say whether it is pronounced now than previous, I think what we as a people need to do is to advocate for this recruitment of qualified Liberians irrespective of ethnicity. Let the criteria be that you are qualified, you are competent, that you have something to bring to the table. Because if we continue to confine ourselves to the ethnic enclave, then we may do a disservice to the country. And sometimes when you look at the problem of Liberia, yes, ethnicity is part of it, but another thing that is part of it is elitism. There is an elite class that comprises of everybody in Liberia. That elite class believe that they have the right to rule Liberia. It doesn't matter your ethnic background, but there is an elite class that comprises of all of these people from every ethnic background. Once you are outside that elite class and you ascend to the leadership of Liberia, then there is holy war on the country. So these are some of the things that we got to come from. I mean, somebody here can recite the names of, this person, that person. We can go back previous time, the past government. We have our president appointing her children in government. On that ethnicity, we can do a statistics. The reason why I don't speak to these things is there is no verifiable statistics on them. We go by the information of the day. For example, who can tell us of the ethnic composition of Samuel Doe government, of Charles Taylor government, even of the various interim government, of Madam Salif government? These are the areas that, maybe little research need to be done. Then we can speak authoritatively. Then also we got to know whether it is we're not just looking at the ethnic level, but whether the individual even has a reasonable basis to be appointed to that position. Because at the same time, while we're fighting ethnicity, you cannot use ethnicity to exclude competent people that are available to serve because of their ethnic background. It can be, we can use it forward, we can use it, backwards. So the emphasis has to be on competence, on qualification, on what the person brings to the table.
Thank you. Dr. Kulah.
I wouldn't say that it's more than any time in our history, but I would say that having gone through our history where ethnicity has always been pronounced, whether it was the Americo-Liberian ethnic group being predominantly in government and being around the powers that be, whether it was through the Doe administration where it was heavily the Kron ethnic group, or whether it was Ellen Johnson Sirleaf's administration where it became more of the elite group of Liberians that Mr. Kunney talks about, which is true, which are part of the different ethnic groups. So you had in Ellen's group what they call Congo people, including Ellen, but Ellen is a Gola chief's daughter, a Gola chief's granddaughter, rather. And so were other people in her administration, which were from different ethnic groups in Liberia, but they were from that, elite group. And then you come to President Weah's group. Right now, I understand there's greater than 50% Southeasterners in his government. The Kru ethnic group is highly predominant in his government. And I could go down and list the names, but I'll save you all that. The Kru ethnic group is heavily predominant, Southeastern is heavy, and whatnot. I think what our cabinet should reflect is not only merit, but because the cabinet is sort of like the American cabinet, because we copy the American system, the cabinet ministers are supposed to advise the president. So if you have somebody of each ethnic group and there's an ethnic balance within your cabinet, not only if he's competent in his area, not only does he advise you on that area, but he also serves as an intermediary for people from that area. You know, I know the legislative branches for that, but also people in the president's cabinet are very close to him. So I think we should look more to merit. We should look more to ethnic balance. We should look more to correcting those things and getting rid of the elitism that Mr. Kunney talked about, so that our country can reflect all of the qualities of its people, sort of like America has been able to do. I think that's what we should strive to do.
Thank you, Mr. Kunney, your rebuttal. And if you are just joining us, the number is posted. If you want to join the conversation, our number is 605-313-6004. The code is 791403. Mr. Kunney, your rebuttal.
Yeah, and I mean, Dr. Kulah may have some points there on the geographic balance and the competence and everything. But again, as I indicated, these things are issue of elementary research that even some of our universities could conduct, so that when people speaking on these matters, they can speak authoritatively. I saw a sample survey of the president cabinet makeup in terms of county representation, which is different from ethnic, but in terms of county representation, I think on average, the president has about 2 ministers from each of the counties. So on appearance, there may be a dominance of people from the Southeast, but people should also understand that if you add the Southeast from, even if you add Bassa to the Southeast, you're talking about 7 of Liberia, 15 counties. So even if you were to do a geographic balance of appointment, there would be a reflection. If you actually follow that standard, there would be a reflection of something that appears like a Southeastern dominance, because there are about 7 Southeastern counties. So I'm saying, I'm not trying to justify any of those things, but I'm just saying sometimes we need to talk from an informed position. These things are little research that schools and universities can do. Again, we fall into this situation where Brother Dennis will politicize anything. Our universities only teach, not even simple research, for us to go on, and like I said, nobody knows the ethnic composition of previous government. We just go by names, So, I mean, speaking of the Southeast, I just wanted for people to be aware that the Southeast has 7 of Liberia 15 counties. So whether it accounts for the dominance that Dr. Kulah is talking about, I don't know, but I'm just speaking geographically. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kulah, your final on that.
No, the dominance that I'm talking about does not reflect the 7 of the counties. It reflects the number of individuals. There's a high preponderance of individuals from the Southeast of Liberia in this cabinet, and there's also a high preponderance of individuals that are of the Kru ethnic group. And if I need to print out an article of all the list of names and their ethnic group and send it to you, I'll do that. But that's the reality. And what I'm saying is, we need to move towards getting a more merit-based cabinet and a more balanced cabinet in the future. I would hope that that's what we'll strive to do.
Thank you.
Then it's just a 15-second input. And I don't disagree with what you're saying, Dr. Kulah. I'm simply saying that the area that covers the Southeast, let us not present it as it is one county. That's what I'm saying. You have about 7 counties that lie in the Southeast. And even if you talk about the ethnic group, they all live in all those counties. You got Kru people that are Grandidians. You got Kru people that are in Maryland. You got Kru people that are in Riverside. You got Kru people that are in Grand Bassa. Even the Moserado County, with its heavy population, has one of the highest concentration of people from the Southeast. If you combine the Grand Bassa people. So I'm just saying that I agree with what you're saying, but I'm just saying that a much more detailed research will be able to point out other variables.
Okay.
Thank you. So let me bring in our callers to join the conversation. It's very interesting. We still have more to go, but let's bring in our caller, even if we don't go any further. Caller, your name and where you're calling from.
My name is Arthur S. Soto, calling from Omaha, Nebraska.
Arthur, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Your question. No comment, please. We just want questions.
Okay. I have three questions. First question, I want to know,
Please write it down.
Dr. Kulah. First question is, I want to know, Dr. Kulah, you are doctor of what?
The next question. He will hold on, Dr. Kulah.
Next question. The next question is to the both of them. Since way back to Turbo, I'm young. I wasn't alive at that time when Torment and Turbo was ruling. But back into those days, we have this Agnes group problem. The best thing, what can we do from now on? We have Mr. Kunney and Mr. Kulah. These are brilliant people. Let them put forward. Can they put forward a solution to solve this problem?
Okay.
My third question will be, is the president have the power to control the vice president if she or he is out of line?
If he or she not what?
Is not doing the right thing or following or pushing the policy of the president.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me take the next caller, and then our panelists can respond. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Our next caller, your name and where you
Yeah, basically, my name is Jerry Kulah, and I'm calling from Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. I actually wanted to just make a brief input, but you said there's no comment. It's only
we want questions.
So I guess, yeah, okay. So thank you. I don't have a question now, but thanks. I'll be on the line watching.
Okay. For that, we give you one minute for your input, for your comment.
Yeah, basically, I just wanted to make a quick input about the credibility of the Liberian government. Yeah, the credibility of the Liberian government. I think the George Weah-led administration has some credibility issues. Let's look at this whole laissez-passer thing. The young man enters the country, you honor his laissez-passer. Then to go back, then the laissez-passer becomes invalid. There's this other issue with Mohammed Kiazulu, the representative for District 17. He's been trying to put forward an impeachment proceeding on the floor of the legislature. So I think people in the ruling party are becoming very uncomfortable with that. They put some group of people together to send them to the legislature to demonstrate. I think they put some ladies together and said that Representative Kiazulu raped them and things like that. Those kind of things kind of create credibility problems for the government, but thank you for the time. I have more to add, but I don't want to take up all your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. All right. You heard the question. I'll start with you, Dr. Kulah.
Yeah, I guess he wanted to know, I'm a doctor of what? I'm a resident physician in family medicine. The other question was, did you write it down?
What we're gonna do to fix the ethnic problem?
What we're gonna do to fix the ethnic problem? What we suggested, get a better balance of the 15 counties in the president's cabinet, because they are his advisors on not only policy matters, but they could also serve as advisors on issues in the various counties between representatives and between the people. And if the people want to get to the president, they could be a conduit to get to the president. So I would suggest we do that. I think it will help us a lot.
Mr. Kunney?
Well, like I said, some of the ethnic issues, they are not issues of today. That's the problem that we've been facing. We have to be creative to find a solution, and we shouldn't be afraid to try any formula. Yes, I mean, sometimes it sounds so good to talk about education and competence, but I can submit to you tonight that if you use that standard alone, each of our ethnic group in Liberia, you can find qualified people that would man the entire government. There is no shortage of qualified people to man the entire government. If you take any, you can pick any. So I think this is where I see some point in what Dr. Kulah is saying, that maybe we can create this geographic, this balance of qualified people they are qualified, but we try to create this balance from each of the counties. And like I said, just a quick perusal. I've not really reviewed it. If you review the current cabinet we have, on average, there seem to be about 2 ministers or 3 ministers from each of the counties. I have to review that information in a much more detailed way. But I think that's one of the ways, because the political space is for all Liberians, and every Liberian should feel represented in that space, no matter who is in power or who is not in power. But that has not been what I've been. I mean, we've not had that, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try that. So I would go for balance and competence, geographic balance and competence. I don't want to dwell on the word ethnic, but geographic balance and competence.
Thank you. Let me take one more caller. Caller, your name and where you calling from?
My name is Garkan Morway, Chicago, Illinois.
Garkan, speak a little louder. Your question, please.
Yes. Yeah. Hello?
Hello, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you for the show. Very engaging conversation tonight. I have 2 questions. Earlier, Chairman Wetty mentioned that he experienced he's a beneficiary of a political asylum, and claimed that Henry Costa
No, hold on. You said Wetty?
No, Chairman Kunney. My papi na again messed that name. Yeah. Chairman Kunney claimed that he stated that he's a beneficiary of a political asylum, and he alluded that Henry Costa also may have claimed or provoked that or filed a political asylum. If he did, to what country and on what grounds, and when did he file that political asylum? And then another question to our learned doctor. Me and him always go back and forth, but I listen to him. I hold him to a high standard, so I want him at all times to keep up to that standard. He claims that Henry Costa will be interviewed by U.S. Congress and all these great people. When last have that happened to any political asylee, if Henry Costa is considered as one in Liberian history? Looking at Charles Siller, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, and all those that became president. When last did that ever happen, that the U.S. Congress called them for questioning at this Capitol building?
Thank you.
Question.
Yeah, Kunney, Mr. Kunney, you go first.
Yeah, so let me clarify again what I was saying, and maybe if it got communicated. I said that as a community leader, as someone who has advocated for the rights of asylum seekers, refugees, I normally default to people that make claim along those lines. I did not say that Mr. Costa has applied for political asylum anywhere, but the claim he made in Sierra Leone is that if he returns to Liberia, his life will be in danger. That is a statement of a fear of persecution from a country that he's fleeing from. So whether he applied for political asylum, I do not know. I was just going by his statement that he feared returning to Liberia. And my position was that under international law, if anybody makes that claim that he's afraid to return to his country of origin because they have fear of death and other things like that, no matter the circumstances, the country in whose you are making that claim, they are bound by international law to ensure that you do not return to that country. So it's not a victory. If there is any victory, it is a victory for international law.
Thank you.
It is not an embarrassment because these are all covenants that governments sign. So how can the government be embarrassed when the protocol that it signs, when that protocol is enforced? So that's the point I was making. I don't know Mr. Costa's asylum status, and I cannot speak to that. So But he just made that claim that his life is in danger. And the point I'm saying is that if he returns to Liberia as a claim, in my opinion, he will be undermining that claim. Either the threat doesn't exist, it's a self-created threat, but to return to a society in which you say there is imminent death for you, it doesn't look rational for me.
Thank you. Let me go to Dr. Kulah to answer his question.
Yeah, I think his question was, when was the last time that Ellen Johnson Sirleaf or any political leader in Liberia has been asked to come before Congress to speak? I can tell you this, that the way this country works in terms of upholding good governance, upholding democracy in the world, whenever there's a high profile person from a country that is, and I'll use Mr. Kunney words, fleeing persecution for their political thoughts and beliefs and ideologies, for protesting, and it raises the profile to the extent that Congress now is pretty much putting Liberia on the radar, where a congressman writes a letter to our government and says, do not bother those protesters. Usually what happens is that those individuals are invited by either that congressman to speak to Congress and give them some synopsis on the political atmosphere in the country. Of course, they get information from their intelligence and from their embassies, but they would like to speak directly from someone facing prosecution in that country. I don't have any proof to give you and say Ellen went and saw them this time, but I can tell you that Ellen had a network of congressional people, whether in the Black Congressional Caucus or other Congress people, before she even became president. And even if they're not dealing directly with the Congress people, they're dealing with their staffers. So I can't guarantee it, but if Costa has not already had contacts from Congress people, I believe he's going to get contacts from Congress people. And if he doesn't, I would suggest that he networks with their staffers and start to talk to them and goes and speaks to Chris Cohn and others and brief them on what's going on in Liberia, so that Liberia can be on the radar, so that the Congress of the United States can hold the government of President Weah to a standard of not reversing all the gains that we've had since Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. And I don't think there's anything wrong with he going before Congress to speak on the issue, or even for him to be escorted back home or get a guarantee from the president that he will not be harmed, since now he's admitted and he said that he will go back home in May. That's all I'm saying. And I hope that something like this happens. If it doesn't, I will start the process.
Thank you. Let's go back. I'm going to make another statement and let you respond.
But can I come here? I thought
no. Oh no, someone from the asked a question. That's what the both of you were responding to.
Okay.
So let's move on. The insults, singing, dancing, and polarization in our Liberian political discourse in this you can call it the Weah era or the Trump era, speaks to our political immaturity. Everybody cussing, dancing. We are the winner. We're gonna get that. All they speak to our political immaturity. Dr. Kulah, you go first.
The insults, dancing.
The insults, dancing, the singing, and the polarization.
I won't limit it to the Weah era, because this didn't start from the Weah era. This started during Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. The insults, the dancing, the polarization, the putting a woman's undergarment up on a stick and putting ketchup on it or whatever, palm oil on it. It all started during Ellen Johnson Sirleaf administration. It didn't start during the Weah era. So it speaks to our political immaturity, yes, in a sense, because we're not dealing with ideologies as far as labor against business or pro-life, you know, and whatnot, pro-choice. We're not dealing with different ideologies, you know, whether it be it capitalism versus a controlled economy. We're not talking those things. Instead, we're insulting each other. We're cursing each other, and we're dividing each other, and it's us against them, and it's hate position, coining words, and reactionary, and all of that. It speaks to our political maturity, and I think it's incumbent upon the leadership in power, the president, his henchmen, his spokespeople like Eugene Fagon and others, to be speaking to the issues. Now, Eugene Fagon claims now he'll be taking the press people in buses and showing them what the president is doing. After 2 years, you just figure that out? You're supposed to be talking about issues in the country instead of chasing every rabbit down the hole. So it speaks to not only our political immaturity, but it speaks to our immaturity as individuals. Most Liberians operate on the level of an average, maybe I would say 6th grader in America. That's how most adult Liberians operate on that level. Just watch our Facebook interaction on political issues. They start to cuss your mom, start to cuss your pa, start to talk about, oh, your hand this, or you can't, you cripple, you this, that. They start to become very little, like kids, taunting, bullying, and all of that. That's immaturity in the mind. I don't think it's only our politics, but it's in our mind. A lot of Liberian adults are still adolescents or preteens. That's how they operate up here. I think that's our problem.
Mr. Kunney?
Yeah, I mean, as we continue these discussions, it is good that we going towards agreement in areas that we previously disagree. What is happening in our country just reflects the national deficit that the country suffer in many areas as a result of the war. I remember one time on this program, I said there was a period in Liberian history where political advocacy, where political protests, everything were issue driven, where the leaders of the political movements were focused on issues, where there were no markers, where there were no parkers, where there were no adequately human resource issues, but the issues were focused on the national political direction of the country. Right now, what we have in our country is an advocacy that is ballot driven for the most part because of the deficits in all of our, using all of the national metrics. And this is where when we first started this debate, I said one of the ways for that country to make progress, one of the ways for us to make progress is to fight for the change of minds. We have to change minds. We have to educate people. We have to conscientize people. We have to bring awareness to people. And people were thinking, say, I was talking about constructing North Korean style communist training camp. Education is important. The idea that anybody can suggest that it will bring change to Liberia without even working to change the mindset of our people is the display of arrogance. These basic issues exist. We need to fight for awareness. We need to educate. We need to educate our people on their civic responsibility. And if we begin to do these things, some of the singing, yes, there will be singing. There has always been celebration at political rallies. But those were for moral boosting. And then after the singing, you know, and the cultural display, you go to the discussion of substantive national issues. But what we have right now is just the singing and the dancing. And I'm calling on my colleagues that we have to return to basic. We have to conduct civic education for Liberians to know what it means to vote, what the electoral process means. This is the way we make progress. For anybody to say that, well, look, let's disregard and let's just fight for this angelic leader who will carry us to the promised land, it's a false start. So if we educate, if we tell, if we conscientize, if we build awareness and the people are aware of their conditions and the issues that confront them, the people will be discussing those issues instead of dancing and singing and getting few couple rights to give people power. That's my belief. And this is where the strategic approach is coming from. I get criticized because people say I'd like to use long term. This generation, we have to learn. This generation, we have to take the decision to sacrifice for the generation that is behind us. We cannot look at political issues only from the nose, where the benefit is coming to us. It cannot be that way.
Thank you. Let me take a caller. Caller, your name and where you calling from?
My name is Asumana Thomas from Baltimore.
Can you
Thank
speak
you
up a little bit more?
My name is Asumana Thomas from Baltimore.
Asumana, welcome to Focus.
Can you hear me clear?
Yeah, your question, please.
Thank you for bringing me on. I got two questions.
Thank you.
My first question is, I don't know if it have been asked, the appointment of the agriculture minister. We know that she is involved in agriculture in Liberia, and she's doing well in it. Now that she's being appointed as Minister of Agriculture, would there be no conflict of interest when it comes to operating her farm and that of government or farm that would be under her care? My second question is about Henry Costa. What is his charge? Why is government after Henry Costa? Did he make the laissez-passer, or somebody from the embassy or the foreign ministry had that laissez-passer for him? Thank you.
Thank you. I go to you first, Mr. Kunney.
Well, the issue of the conflict of interest, I kind of commented on that. First of all, I don't even know the skill of the kind of farm this woman, this minister is alleged to.
No, she buys rice from farmers and process it, then sell it.
Okay, and like I said, we have to see her policies, we have to see her programs. We cannot create conflict of interest in the, in vague terms. So we have to wait and see, what is the scale of what she's doing vis-a-vis her official role. The issue of Henry Costa, again, is another issue. The story keeps changing, and I can only share my personal experience. What I do know is that laissez-passer is a temporary document. In fact, as a general principle, most Liberian diplomatic missions do not issue laissez-passer. It is a discretionary action that they take based on some emergency situations that require them, that make them to give you that document to travel to your country, either because a passport is not available, in a reasonable time. And when I was in active practice, the policy was that anybody entering Liberia with a laissez-passer, the laissez-passer is confiscated at the airport, whether valid or invalid, because the laissez-passer enables you to enter your country. When you enter there, for whatever reason you didn't have passport, the policy is done that you will apply for passport. So the whole idea that even a laissez-passer left the airport, that is something that is contrary to the practice that I'm aware of. Again, it doesn't have to be valid or invalid. Once you present a laissez-passer at the airport, that laissez-passer is confiscated. I know so because I traveled to Liberia in 2017 with a laissez-passer because my Liberian passport had expired. So based on that review, the embassy reviewed my situation and they issued me a laissez-passer, which was immediately confiscated when I arrived at the airport. Now the story of Mr. Costa's laissez-passer keeps changing. And so in the absence of a real investigation, it will be very difficult to make a determination because according to him, the laissez-passer was presented, the immigration reviewed it, and they didn't take no action, and he left the airport. But his recent interview now is that the laissez-passer that the immigration showed him on his departure is different from the one that he showed. That the people may have given him another laissez-passer. So the question is, was the laissez-passer left with the immigration and he was somebody was keeping it for him? And upon arrival, they give it to him? So, these are questions, that remain unanswered. Either the laissez-passer is taken from you, or you are allowed to, if they breach the protocol, then he will have taken the laissez-passer along with him. But to now suggest that what he presented is different from what he had when you were about to leave, it creates a lot of questions.
Thank you. Let
Yeah.
me go to Dr. Kulah on those two questions.
When it comes to the conflict of interest issue, the code of conduct should guide whatever she can do with her business, whether she continues to run the business or continue to be active in the business or not. The code of conduct should cover that. And our legislators, when they bring her up for confirmation, they should ask her questions regarding conflict of interest and how she will handle her business as the Minister of Agriculture going forward. Because what you don't want is for her to benefit exclusively and push international monies towards her business and towards her people in order to benefit at the detriment of others. So that is what I would suggest as far as that is concerned. But yes, there is a conflict of interest issue with her being in the business of buying rice, exporting rice on a high scale, like I said, because she's been given awards and everything. She's known internationally for that. As far as Henry Costa, I think Mr. Kunney is a little confused here. And this is what happens when you have a government that spends its time being reactionary and insulting people in the opposition or people that they see as enemies instead of seeing them as their citizens and seeking to explain what's going on. Henry Costa never said the laissez-passer that was presented to him when he was leaving was different than what he gave. Henry Costa came on a laissez-passer which he presented when he entered Liberia's port of entry, Roberts International Airfield. That laissez-passer was taken from him, as is done with everybody, stamped, and they kept it. He left. When he was leaving to go out of the country, Henry Costa was now using his passport, because instead of flying back to Ghana, he was now flying from Monrovia, and I think he was going by SN Brussels. So he was going by Brussels, then to the US. So he had his Liberian passport, and they wanted to see his passport, and he felt they wanted to seize it. And he refused to give his passport to the immigration officer, and instead told them to take his luggage down from the plane. He deplaned and he left. Okay? Now, when they started doing their investigation, his claim is that the laissez-passer that he presented to them at the port of entry was not the laissez-passer they showed when he gave that statement. They showed him a different laissez-passer, which he felt his signature was forged on that laissez-passer, because the government statement here is that Henry Costa laissez-passer is valid, but the immigration officer that signed it is not the correct guy that should have signed it, and the stamp is not the correct stamp. Those are the 2 points they have. So my issue then is this: if you say the laissez-passer is valid, which means it's a document from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, somebody else stamped it, somebody else signed it. To me, it's an internal control problem. You've gotten a statement from the gentleman on how he got his laissez-passer. Now you do your internal investigation to find out who in your offices signed that laissez-passer and who stamped it, who used that stamp. What stamp is that they use? Okay, you find out whether they have a government issued receipt for payments for the laissez-passer, or whether it was paid under the table. If it was paid under the table, who did they pay it to?
Thank you, Dr.
If they don't want to call the guy's name, you find out who in your offices issued that laissez-passer. You should know your workers' signatures.
Thank you.
That's the point I see.
Dennis.
Yeah, go ahead with your rebuttal for 1 minute.
Yeah, let's say Dr. Kulah. Dr. Kulah actually, has some strong words, confused. I think if there is anybody who is confused here, is Dr. Kulah may have been confused by the fact I'm quoting Mr. Costa's recent interview that is reported. That is, Dr. Kulah, with that lamp, can I lamp, please? I'm quoting Mr. Costa's interview. Recent interview has reported by the Front Page Africa newspaper this evening. Mr. Costa, according to Front Page Africa, says that he left his Liberian passport in Ghana because he wanted to apply for an European visa. He wanted the visa to be available when he returns to Ghana because he wanted to go and visit his son in Italy. So his Liberian issue passport was left in Ghana. He therefore sought a travel laissez-passer to Liberia. According to him, it is this laissez-passer that he presented at RIA. When he returned to the airport for departure, the laissez-passer that the government allegedly presented to him is completely different from the laissez-passer he's presented. Well, I'm quoting, don't shake your head, read Front Page Africa.
Don't look at his head.
Yeah.
He's not talking.
So he gave reason why he left his passport. Oh. And I'm not confused. I'm giving you a practical application of procedures at the Rawa International Airport. When you arrive with laissez-passer, they take it from you. It is not kept for you to arrive for them to give it to you again.
You're wrong, Mr. Kunney, you're wrong.
But Mr. Kulah, you have not, when line you were in Liberia and when line did you travel on a laissez-passer?
I'm not saying, I've traveled on a laissez-passer. I'm not saying the procedure is wrong. I'm saying your interpretation of what Costa said is wrong. I sent, what's his name, the interview. That's not what Costa said.
Oh, all right, okay, let's leave it there.
Send Dennis the interview.
That's not
what
I'm giving you a...
Let's leave it there. Let's get Mr. Costa on focus on Liberia so we can find that out. Let's go to our next issue. And we have two more and then we'll be closing, okay? So each of you mentioned the legislators, right? The legislative branch of government is more of a problem than the executive branch. Dr. Kulah, you go first.
Legislative branch of government is more of a problem than the executive branch. I agree with that. I agree with it because the legislative branch has the power to be more powerful than the executive branch, as we see here in America. But because everybody in the legislative branch is so weak, and most of our very strong candidates have focused only on being president, so therefore we get what we have in the legislative branch. And during the Ellen Johnson administration, she weakened them even more by throwing brown envelopes at them and realized that they didn't even have the wherewithal to say, okay, in our laws, bribery is wrong. We could impeach this lady, but all of them are so co-opted in one way or another. It's like a big game. It's like a bunch of little kids. Just everybody just want to get rich and get as much money as they can. Not really having any ethics or morals, or not coming from a position of saying, this is a country we're running and this is how we want to see this country run. But everybody just is morally bankrupt and deficient to the point that anything goes in that country. The country is loose, as one of my relatives would say. So yes, the legislative branch is more of a problem. And I think A.B. Darius Dillon has been saying that. He said, if the plenty people, as he likes to simplify most of what he's saying, if the plenty people can allow one man to send down bad laws or bad stuff and they all agree with it, then the plenty people are the problem. Because, I mean, look at the simple thing where we have put his wife in our budget. Now, you mean to tell me there was nobody in that legislative branch that could stand up and say, well, Mr. President, this is unprecedented. We don't budget for the first lady in our budget. There's no such line item that never happened. There's no law, so we can't do that. It'll be better that you let her like control the mansion and the banquets that happen at the mansion, or the decoration of the mansion, or renovation of the mansion, or something to do with the well-being of the mansion or your household, but not to put her in the budget and then duplicate something that the gender ministry should be doing. Instead, I think it was your show. I called in, and one of the legislators said, "Yeah, that's true, but what's she doing that good? She's taking care of our old people." Is that what she's supposed to be doing? Use our tax dollars to take care of our old people? I thought that's what the gender ministry is for. I thought that's what the group of 77 and other things are for. So yeah, the plenty of people in the legislative branch are the problem, because they could be much stronger. They could act as elders of the state to hold the president in check, but instead they're all co-opted. They all got their hands out, or they all are controlled by the president because he has either their wives or their relatives in some appointed position. That's the problem.
Mr. Kunney.
Dennis, look, for us to make progress in our country, we have to agree to certain basic facts. You know, for someone to suggest that the office of the first lady should not be supported through budgetary means is something that is outstanding.
First, respond to my statement, and then you can do your rebuttal of Dr. Kulah.
Oh, but Dennis, your statement is the foundation of my advocacy, and this is why I'm saying that the more we stay on this show, we will find more agreement with the views that we've expressed here. That, look, for a democracy to function, you need a functioning legislature. We have to change the contours of legislative power. This is where the actual power of the people lies. And this is the education that people need to carry to our people, you know? And this is where voter education lies. This is where civic education lies. The legislative branch of the government is the most important branch in the entire structure of governance. They can hold the executive accountable. They can hold the judiciary accountable. They are the one that confirm judges. They are the one that impeach judges. They are the one that improve the presidential action. So again, let us keep the focus where it's supposed to be. It is not only Dillon that is saying it. Oscar Cooper is saying it. The legislators themselves are saying it. The only people who feel that the president is our problem are the people who, for one reason or the other, you know, have their own disagreement with the president. I believe that our democracy is working. We don't have a dictatorship in Liberia. We've lived through dictatorship, so we know what dictatorship is. We have to embrace our democracy. This is a young democracy. This is the first time Liberians are directly electing their leaders. Let us adopt a long-term approach to make this system better, to change the system long-term. Let us stop all these gate-crashing political processes that will short-circuit our society and make us to always be starting over. We should not start over again. The legislature has a problem. Let us work to change the legislature. We got 15 senators coming for election this year. All of these things will be heard. The country is terrible. The country will soon collapse. I mean, the president is mismanaging the country. These are political points. Take it to the voters.
Thank you.
But don't do anything to shortcut our democracy and interrupt our peace and say that there is some kind of international community that is willing to come to the rescue of the nation. We should not mislead our people that way. The international community has their own problem. Every country in the international community has their own problem.
Thank you, Mr.
Liberians this point is very important. People should not be misleading our people to break down the peace and security of the country with this notion that there is some international angels that are willing to march in to go and save us. That's a fantasy.
Point taken. Let me bring in the caller. Caller, your name and where you're calling from.
Oh, my name is Stanley Josh, and I call from Louisville, Kentucky.
Stanley, welcome.
Your
question.
Thank you for giving me the time. I am constrained to call because there were some issues raised by both our guests on your platform, and one has to do with Mr. Kulah. Can you hear me?
Do you have a question?
I have one question to Mr. Kulah, and I have some clarification to make
on
some of those issues that they talk about.
We don't have enough time, so please ask the question.
Okay. Mr. Kulah, you said that Liberians are acting immature, but I want to ask you, on yesterday, comments that you made on white marker government show. Was it a mature statement that you made on his platform yesterday?
If I recall, the statements that I made on the platform was very mature to say.
Hold on, Dr. Kulah. Hold on. Can you? Okay, that's your question. I want to go to the next caller. Please write down the question. We want to go take a few more callers, and then you can begin to answer. Okay. So let me go to my next caller. Caller, your name and where you calling from?
My hair hurting me, and I won't call my name.
Oh, your question. That's
Curtis.
My question here, what I want to ask any people, because I will be doing the investigation video. It will be coming soon from D. Curtis. The question what I want to clarify here, because I no more travel with laissez-passer before. The man say when you travel with laissez-passer, when you enter the country, they can take it from you. That means you can't use it again. They don't only hold it for you when you're ready to go back, then they give it back to you, or they can take it from you and you can't use it again. That is one question there. The B part of that question, if they can't give it back to you, does that mean Costa had two laissez-passer? Because he stated on his thing, he said when he ready to go back, he will give the people laissez-passer. So he came in with one. If they seize that one and not giving it to him again, does it mean he will having another laissez-passer to go back? Or when you come in, the season, when you're ready to go back, they can give it back to you. That's the answer what I want, because I put in my resources now together for my next video.
Thank you, D. Curtis. We know you now. Okay, let me take one more caller and then you guys can answer, okay? Caller, your name, where you calling from?
I'm Ketabin Dava, and I'm calling from Texas.
Kesali, welcome. Your question, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Jack. I have a question for Mr. Kunney, right?
Yeah.
My question is that I want him to please tell me which part of the world you can find someone running humanitarian organization on government funding. That is with the first lady being part of the budget of the country and saying she's doing humanitarian work. Because I can recall right here in America, the former first lady, Madam Clinton, was being charged for using government funding for using humanitarian jobs. So I just wanted to please clarify that part for me.
Thank you.
If it is not part of the corruption we're talking about.
Thank you. Okay. We got just one more caller, so let me just take the caller and then close our calls. Caller, your name?
Hello?
Yes, your name and where you calling from?
Yeah, my name is Oliver Zodoa. I'm calling from New York.
Oliver, you saying?
Yes.
Okay, your question.
Yeah, my
please.
name is Oliver Zodoa. I'm calling from. Yeah, you guys, first of all, I thank you. This is my first time calling, so I don't want to waste time. I want to ask Dr. Kulah, I'm sorry. I used the Bishop Kulah name. I want to ask Dr. Kulah a personal question, if you don't mind. The question is that have you benefited from the Liberian Education through scholarship from the Liberian government? That's my first question.
Liberian what?
Then have you ever benefited from the Liberian education system through scholarship? That's my question. And the second question is I don't know whether it's true or not, because it's just a yes or no question or whatever it is. If so, what are some of the contributions have you done to Liberia, for Liberia?
Thank you. I don't understand the basis of that question, but
he wants to know whether I benefited from scholarships from Liberian government, and if so, what are the contributions I've given to Liberia? I'll answer him.
Okay. All right. Let's go to the question. So let's start with you, Dr. Kulah.
All right.
The question on laissez-passer, and then now on the benefit.
The laissez-passer question, I think, was for Kunney.
Okay. Don't give my question to the mail. Don't bring your Georgia bias here.
I wrote my questions down. My question was, a gentleman from Kentucky asked whether the statement I wrote on Michael Gilman's page, whether that was mature. What I wrote on Michael Gilman's page was that the night before Costa was supposedly supposed to be returned to Liberia at 5 o'clock the next day, according to the Solicitor General and all of the high-placed people that Michael Gilman was getting Costa's passport from and posting it, and the laissez-passer and other things, and they had a whole rejoicing ceremony that night, and he started playing Running Away and all of that. I stated to him, I said, to rejoice for the return of a Liberian, I think it's a sad, sad situation. That was one comment I wrote. And then the other comment I wrote is that in this whole thing, the government has lost. And I repeated it tonight. The government has lost because it wasn't worth it. You know, the Costa has won in the court of public opinion internationally, and the government has lost. It's brought a dent on the government. I don't care how Mr. Kunney wants to say, oh, most countries are not going to send you back if you're fearing political prosecution and whatnot. Why elevate a laissez-passer issue to the level of political prosecution, fear of prosecution, and now the information minister started talking about fraud and insurrection and all that. Why do all of that over a laissez-passer issue when everybody sees right through it and sees that a political critic—
Let's go to the question you were asked, because you don't have much time.
That's fine. You can cut me off when you're ready. The political critic that insults the president is being pursued. Now, as far as whether I've benefited from any education scholarships from Liberia, no, not from the Liberian government. I've benefited from personal scholarships, which should remain with me unless I present myself to, let's say, run for office in Liberia or get a position. Then I can tell you my personal background and how I was educated and whatnot. But the Liberian government had nothing to do with my education and my contributions. I contributed a whole lot to Liberia. In fact, Alvin Dona is an indirect beneficiary of my contribution to the medical system in Liberia, because Dr. Paul King, a neurosurgeon here at Atlanta Medical Center, I brought him in to talk to the authorities in Liberia about improving the healthcare delivery system. And it's Dr. Paul King and the Neuroscience Foundation, Kolebu Neuroscience Foundation, based in Canada, that trained Dr. Alvin Dona over the years till now. He was recently able to do surgery at JFK that was all over the news. So I've contributed in the healthcare setting in that regard. I took a psychiatrist to Liberia when we had no psychiatrists working there. I've also been doing a lot with, just the management and different things in the healthcare delivery system in Liberia. So yes, I've been contributing a lot.
Thank you, and thank you for volunteering that personal information. Mr. Kunney.
Yes, again on the issue of the laissez-passer, I still maintain that there is much investigation that needs to be done, especially in view of the new revelation by Mr. Costa's interview as reported by Front Page Africa. Again, D. Curtis, what I do know, first as a former security official and what I experienced personally as a traveler, when you present a laissez-passer at the port of entry in Liberia, the laissez-passer is taken away from you. There is no immigration officer there that is the custodian of laissez-passer for people to go in and out. When you come back, you go look for that officer to go get a laissez-passer. I'm not aware of that. The laissez-passer is a temporary travel document that enables you to enter the country. And as a meeting, when you enter, it now becomes your responsibility to get your legitimate passport. So the fact that there are now claims by Mr. Costa that the laissez-passer he presented is different from the laissez-passer that he carried to the airport. All of these things are the area where investigation is required. I want to believe it was the kind of investigation that was ongoing for which the immigration services, had requested him to come and make clarification. So yes, laissez passes they are confiscated at the airport. They don't allow you to carry it in time, bring it back. It's not passport. The second question about the first lady budget. I didn't indicate here that the first lady is doing humanitarian. I'm not familiar with the activities of the first lady. What I said is that the first lady is entitled to a budget. The first lady is entitled to a budget. The first lady has security requirements. How you think the security people are going to be paid? The first lady has other obligations, so she's entitled to a budget. As to what goes into that budget is fall within the purview of the legislature. And yes, first lady can do humanitarian things. You know, I mean, when we in America here, Michelle Obama was, on these healthy things, they are all humanitarian things. But there are some first ladies that use foundation, they use charitable donations to do humanitarian things. So nobody knows the source of the money for that the first lady is using to do the things that she's doing. But to say that
the source, it's coming from our budget.
Dr. Kulah, you don't have the fact that the first lady is using a government fund for personal humanitarian thing. You don't have that fact. You are speculating. The only thing we can agree to is that the first lady does indeed need a budget. You can't dismiss it that the first lady don't need a budget. First lady everywhere has a budget. As to what goes into that budget is for the legislature to debate. And if they find it in their wisdom that in fact she needs a budget for certain humanitarian project, that is the decision of the legislature. There is no law we have in Liberia that say first lady not supposed to do this or do that. This is where the legislative process comes in. But let us not tell the audience that the first lady doesn't need no budget. No, she needs it.
Thank you. Our last segment, our last statement that you react to, and then we bring in our business and economic analyst to analyze what you've been doing tonight. The last one, the Liberia National County Sport Meet is just a mere football competition. It does not develop players, unify the country, or generate any significant revenue, and must be discontinued. Mr. Kunney.
I disagree. The county meet is an important event where counties in the country showcase their talent, and lot of national talents have been selected from the county meet over the years. A lot of county talents have been selected from the county meet, and I think it should be a sport event. Let us not politicize everything in Liberia. It should be a sport event where young people will come, where young people will proudly represent their country of origin. There is nothing wrong with people celebrating the country that they come from. Nothing wrong with that. And this, the sport arena is one of the conflict-free zone where competition should be encouraged, where talent should be scouted, and where people should celebrate. So the notion that he has not contributed to the national sport development is not true, because there are none of players that went on the national scene that were recruited from the counties. Tamba Fala, I mean, a lot of players. Memory loss now. Maybe to even make some of their names. But the county league has produced players for our national sport program, and it should not be politicized. It should remain sport. It's not everything in our country will carry politics to, my people.
Dr. Kulah.
I agree that I agree with him to a certain extent that it does unify our nation, that it does develop players. But what I don't agree with is the money aspect. I don't see that the players get anything from it. They're hardly paid for their services. Like everything we do in our country, there's never accountability when it comes to the money aspect. So I think we could do a little better when it comes to funds that are generated from the county meet and how players are paid for their services during that period. But indeed, it does unify our country. It helps to bring about camaraderie. It helps to develop players for the national team and whatnot. So that's my take on that.
All right. Let me read a few comments as we are winding down. And Mr. Chuchu Jones, you are still trying to connect. If you are successful, let me know. Francis Whitford says, Francis Whitford. So where is the law that says the first lady needs a budget? Kesselly Double said the first lady is not to be on government annual budget, and no one does humanitarian work on government's budget. Let me see. Humphrey said first lady budget is unacceptable. The senators and legislators are just jokers. Humphrey also said Dr. Kulah is biased. Costa himself stated that he will be presenting Liberian passport on his way out.
Liberian passport, not laissez-passer.
Dave just said, this is why, okay, talking about the agriculture minister, this is why she is hired. Another double error conflict with agriculture. The president doesn't understand the intricacies of the appointment. He's being goofed by Emmanuel Shaw. Theo King, how did the luggage get on the plane without proper checking? Talking about Costa luggage that he asked to be deplaned. He was going back to Ghana with the laissez-passer.
SM Brussels doesn't go to Ghana, my people. Hey, man, come on.
Emmanuel Jackson said, Liberia is like a child who refuses to grow up. We can be intellectual about it, Liberia's failure to do the right thing. Enforce the law against wrongdoings in the government, LACC, GAC, Global Witness, etc. Those found guilty are never ever prosecuted. There will only be anemic economic growth. Let me take my final caller, and then we'll get Alex in and we'll be closing the broadcast tonight. Caller, your name and where you're calling from.
Dennis, this is Amos George calling from Atlanta, Georgia.
Amos, welcome. Your question.
I got a comment and question for Mr. Is it Mr. Kunney?
Yeah, we want the question. We don't have much time for the comment.
Okay. Here's my question. We talk about corruption, the first lady. What is the role of the first lady? Because one time or last year I was on a platform and the Minister of Information came to attack me. The first lady was meeting a delegation in the office of the president. And I asked the question, what was her role she was playing? Meeting delegation that came from China and using the president's office. So my question to him, what is the role of the first lady when she's meeting trade delegation coming from foreign country?
Thank you.
Using the president's office? Don't you think that is a conflict of interest and that is some of the corruption that the Liberian people are talking about?
Thank you, Mr. Josh. And you know, Mr. Josh is vocal, so don't say we're playing Atlanta on you. Go ahead, Mr. Kunney.
Listen, I disagree very strongly. I disagree very strongly. The first lady is part of the country's official family. You know, the president of the Republic of Liberia can designate the first lady, or to do any number of things. He can designate the first lady, can sit in any meeting if the president deem it that way. These are the prerogative of the president.
What you talking, Mr. Kunney?
We should. You asked a question, I'm answering, you interrupted me. You asking me a question, I'm answering, you interrupted me.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
You see, these are the prerogatives of the president. If the president wants his children to sit in cabinet meeting, that's the president's decision. If the president wants his children to run diplomatic mission, that's the president's decision. Jared Kushner, president and son-in-law, is senior advisor to the president. So these things, they are very petty to the issue that faces that country. Where first lady sit down in the office, where first lady sit down in the office, these things are very petty. The president can invite anybody he wants to invite to that office. He can even invite you to consider there to meet a foreign leader if he so desires. And you're talking about the first lady of the republic?
Thank you. Dr. Kulah. even though the question was not for you, but if you want to respond.
Yeah. First of all, what Mr. Kunney fails to realize is that the First Lady does not have an established office of the First Lady like here in America, where they have an established office of the First Lady, and the office of the First Lady, I think, is on the East Wing, and the President's office is in the West Wing. We don't have such an arrangement in Liberia. We don't. It never has been. It never was. If you check from Nancy Doe time, from President Tolbert's wife, from President Tubman's wife, none of them had any such thing. Okay, so to give these people this—
That's not true. That's not true.
Okay, to give these people this impression that we have the office of the First Lady, that's not true. Number one. Number two, when the First Lady came forth, she came forth with a foundation. That's what she said she had. She said she had a foundation, and they had business people line up along with government officials line up and give money to her foundation. And next thing we look, the president went and recast the budget from I think 2018 budget and gave her $5,000 US for her foundation, okay, out of our taxpayers' money. Then when his own budget was recast, when he did his own budget, he gave her, I think, $1 million of our country's money. And all that they've been doing are humanitarian work, like feeding the elderly, and I think a place in Bassett, she bought a piece of land and is building something there for either kids or orphanage or something. Now, the legislator said, well, as long as she's using our money for our people, there's no problem. Okay, fine. But then we're duplicating stuff because the gender ministry has that under their purview. We also have the group of 72nd that does stuff for our disabled. Now, if you want to establish a office of the First Lady with a budget to pay her staff and to cover whatever and to give her certain specific things to do, then let's do that and let the legislators approve it. But it shouldn't be up to the president to just decide, I want to give my wife $500,000 of Liberian government money for her to do what she feels like doing with it. Or I can decide to have my wife meet a Chinese delegation to go into business with them to do hair and stuff like that, and get a bunch of girls and send them abroad to train to do so they can open a sweatshop or whatever, or a hair shop to be doing hair. No, that's not how we should run our country because Trump does it. He has his son-in-law in so the president can do that. No, we shouldn't do that.
Dennis,
we have a nepotism law. We have laws that are specific to the code of conduct that specifies certain standards in our government. And we should not just allow this president to do whatever he feels like doing. I disagree with that.
Dennis, Dr. Kulah is increasingly becoming a purveyor of very false information on this platform. The office, there has always been the office of the First Lady in Liberia, Dr. Kulah. I'm telling you.
Show me evidence of that and show me.
Nessa Bido had an office on the 5th floor of the executive mansion. I know so because I'm in security. I was in security then. She had a large security detail. Her office was located on the 5th floor of the executive mansion, and she was protected by government security. So the office of the First Lady has always existed. Let us not dispute that. What I'm saying is that office is entitled to a budget. What goes into that budget is the responsibility of those who approve the budget. For Dr. Kulah to continue to say the president didn't give anything. The First Lady office may be utilizing funds that were legally approved by the national legislature. The president is now doling government money to the First Lady, and to convey that is just propaganda. It's just propaganda. And I maintain the president of the republic has the prerogative to invite anybody into the executive mansion, be it his wife, his children, to sit on any meeting. He can waive the security clearance for anybody to sit on any meeting, irrespective of who you are.
Do it because you saw Trump do it, so now our president can do it, right?
He has that responsibility,
right?
Dr. Kulah, you are a medical doctor. You are a medical doctor. You have certain limitations in the matter of state. The president of the country has that responsibility to waive any any security clearance for anybody to enter the executive mansion.
No, we're not talking about the executive mansion. We're not talking about the executive.
To sit in any meeting.
The sitting meeting.
Thank you.
To sit, yes.
And to do what Trump did is basically
the president has that's his prerogative. He can do that.
Right.
The president can do that.
Right.
That's his discretion. Why you want to argue with people's discretion?
Thank you.
That's his discretion.
Thank you. My last caller, really last caller. Caller, very briefly, your name and ask your question, please.
Hello, Mr. John.
Yes, sir. Your name and where you calling from?
Okay. This is Ben Sanvey. I'm calling from North Carolina.
Ben, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Your question, please.
Thank you. And first of all, let me thank Dr. Kulah and Mr. Kunney. I've joined in a little late, but I've been following some of the discussion, and I think it's healthy. I wanted to make some clarifications regards to the office of the First Lady. It is Mr. Kunney is right. There has been what is called the office of the First Lady. What he's wrong on is that office has never been within the Liberian national budget. The First Lady is an extension of the President's office under the Ministry of State. When you talk about the issue of security, the First Lady, in fact, the President, the Vice President, and their family, and I think the Speaker and some other extra people based on the definition of what the President or what is deemed, are entitled to EPS, which is what used to be SSS. And I think Mr. Kunney is maybe he's aware of that.
Exactly.
So on the issue of the problem that people are having.
Ben, Ben, do you have a question?
So let Dennis. I beg.
Well, no. I just wanted to make some clarification. That's all.
Okay. I was not taking question, but one of my panelists gave you that uses discretionary power. So go ahead and conclude, please.
Okay, no problem. But I do understand where Dr. Kulah is coming from, because it is true. Never in our country's history there was a specific line in the budget called Office of the First Lady. It's never happened. Right. What has happened is that the First Lady do get some benefits, but it's under the President's office. Right. Because the role of the First Lady has always been ceremonial. There's never been a defined TOR. In fact, the only First Lady who literally,
So in that case, the legislators are responsible and not the President.
Exactly.
Well, it's a slippery slope. And let me say this. Let me say why I say it's a slippery slope. Because the President, the budget emanated from the executive. I do understand where Mr. Kunney is coming from, because ultimately the legislature has a responsibility to pass the budget. But the line item that was infused in the budget for the office of the First Lady came from the executive. So by extension, it was the President who put it in there, and the legislature passed it. So I think the blame can be shared, right? The only thing here is, and the clarification I'm trying to make here is, the office of the First Lady has never had a defined TOR. In fact, when First Ladies come into power, when their husbands become president, they try to find a pet project. They find something that they care for. The only First Lady that I know that kind of really transformed that office from just a ceremonial role was now Vice President Joel Taylor. And the reason I say so is because I was in Liberia, and I was one of the people who, I was involved in some of her activities. But even with that, current Vice President Taylor did not have a line item in the budget. The only thing that the Liberian government was responsible for with her or other First Ladies were security, probably feeding, because they're all under the President's office. Because she and the President and the First Lady are one, really, So I do understand what Dr. Kulah is saying, that the President of Liberia, he broke the truth is he should not have put in a line, they should not have put in a line item in the national budget for office of the First Lady to receive $1.5 million. It should not have happened, or $1 million. It should not have happened. For office, and he gave her $1 million from his budget, which is office of the President. That's his prerogative.
Thank you,
But
Ben.
he should not have included that, because what happened, just one thing before I leave, because what happened was, on top of that 1.5 or 1 million, you also still have the president on a budget. So, that's the little line. But there's been office of the First Lady. It's just that it has not been, a statutory office that was established by law.
Mr. Host, this is Alex. And Ben, if you could stay on for a little bit, I have a question for you.
Oh, Mr. Jones, Mr. John, please, just make sure I want Mr. Jones' number. I've asked you for this number a long time. You refuse. I don't know why you want me to get together. Mr. Jones, I'm excited that you're on. Thank you. I'm a huge fan.
Thanks for calling. I was taking the night off, but since you decided to come on, and so I have a question for you. And thanks for coming on as well as the two panelists. I enjoy them all the time. A big fan of mine. But and this will be a question that maybe share. I know we passed time. Beautiful show, but you made mention that the president did not have the prerogative to put his first lady into a line item. Okay, all right. But according to our Constitution, right, the president, through the Ministry of Finance, all right, submits a budget of his choosing, correct?
Yes.
That means the president, according to our law, can say, Alex Jones lives in America, he does nothing for Liberia, but as president of Liberia, I think you give Alex Jones $5 million to go party in the Bahamas. According to our law, that is correct. You support that law. Terry Council supports that law. Okay? The legislators support that law. Kulah supports that. Dr. Kulah supports that law. Mr. Kunney supports that law. All of us support that law. But then why do we have a problem then when the president elects to take that privilege that was given him by the Constitution and say, all right, since I can submit any budget, all right, so long as it's passed by the legislature, why do we have why do we take a front at it when we're the one who allow the president to have that much power? That's my question to all the panelists, including you, Mr. Ben.
Okay, let me take a stab at it so I can leave because I was not invited. I was not part of this show. I was doing a simple calling. Mr. Jones, and what I was saying, right? You are right. The president the executive does have a right to raise a budget. The executive raises the budget and then passes over it to the legislature for the legislature to pass it into law, which becomes hand notes and stuff like that, right? All the different legal terms. What I was saying was that the president does not have a right to say the thing with the office of the first lady, right? The president can get the office of the first lady $5 million. It just should not be a line. So we're saying that.
Yeah, but Mr. Ben, yes, but you contradicting yourself, Mr. Ben. Mr. Ben, you contradicting yourself. You say the president does not have the right, but the Constitution gives the president the right to submit any budget. That means he can give it to Alex Jones. He can give it to anybody. He has that right. If you don't want him to have that right, then take the right away from him and say we're going to pass an article that the president will not do this.
Hold on,
Mr. Ben. Jones, you're not.
Hold on, Ben.
Okay.
The president can submit his budget, and he says
any budget.
Right. Right. So I think the prerogative there is for the legislators. The onus is on them to reject this or not. So
exactly.
So why is this thing is on the president so much?
Right.
No. Listen. I'm not disagreeing that why I said the blame is shared. My point, the way I'm coming from, is that the president or his handlers or the people who crafted his budget with him, right, or his minister of finance, should be able to tell him, Mr. President.
Why? Why not? Why not?
No.
Why? Okay. The question. Okay, the president has the right to submit any budget. But the president can establish it. The president can establish any office, right?
Okay.
No. The president cannot establish any office. No.
Ben, just make your point.
No, the president cannot establish any office. the president cannot establish any office.
By executive order, the president can.
Hold on, Alex.
By executive order.
No, he can't.
Hold on, Alex. We want Ben to conclude.
No, he can't.
He can leave. Ben,
Okay.
please conclude your
No,
point.
he can't. Let me say this. Right? Let me say this. Before something becomes a line item in the budget, it has to be created by law, statutory, right? That's why you got ministries, you got agencies, you got all these things. The president can get out tomorrow and say, I'm creating a ministry of what he can propose. The president can propose that I want to create a ministry of Alex Jones. It has to be passed by the legislature for that ministry of Alex Jones to become law, to become a legal entity within the government to have a line item. What I'm saying here is the president, by putting a line item in the budget, calling the office of the First Lady, is breaking the law because that office is not statutory. There's nothing in our law that says there is an office of the First. There has been legal enough, but there is the office of the First Lady under the President's office in the Ministry of State. So her budget should have been under the Ministry of State for Presidential Affairs. If the president won't get the First Lady, now I agree with you. That's why I say under the line items under Ministry of State should have been office of the First Lady. The office of the First Lady it should not have been a line item by itself. That's where I'm arguing. I agree with everybody here. The legislature should have raised that issue because that the legislature are supposed to do the checks and balance, and they are not doing it. That I agree with.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you.
Dennis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Dennis. Dennis.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So again,
don't make the same point.
The facts have been established. Yes, there has been no statutory law that create office of the First Lady, but there has been the office of the First Lady. From government to government, there has been that office. Okay. And that office has received government funding. That is the basic point I'm making. That office has received government funding over the years. As to what goes into that funding is the responsibilities of those who approve the budget for the nation. And so let us not carry this notion that the First Lady has no budget. That's my major argument. I don't know whether the First Lady budget is a separate budget that they carry. I don't know where it falls, but I know everything that relates to the president falls under the Ministry of State. So I don't know what in that budget where her name is located. I've not seen it. But let us not misinform people that the office of the First Lady has not been funded by public funds. That is not true. It is not correct.
Thank you. So Dr. Kulah, if you agree with Ben's argument, so the problem there is where does it fall in the budget is the contention. It can be appropriated. Money can be given to the office of the First Lady, but under which line item? Should it be under presidential affairs? Should it be on its own? Should it be under gender? Should it be? Is that where you're coming from as well?
Oh, no.
Let me agree that public funds should be appropriated first because you disagree.
Let me speak, please. Let's not conflate this thing. Ben made it clear, right? There's no statutory
we get that
of the First Lady. It's
we all agree.
Ceremonial office, and it's always been. Now, if the president wanted to give his wife money under the office of the First Lady, it should have gone under Ministry of State for Presidential Affairs, period. He should not have given her money under a separate line item. So that's clear.
So what difference does it make?
It makes a huge difference. Ben already said that. You cannot do that unless it's that entity has been created by law, like a ministry or an agency.
So all right. Let me thank you. Okay, Alex is just coming, so I just give you the time.
It's a matter of semantics.
Okay. Okay. So first of all,
hold on.
Okay. So first of all,
hold on, Alex.
Yeah,
hold on, Alex, because we're not going to start a new conversation. So since we do everything, I just want you to provide your analysis and your input so that we can can close the broadcast tonight.
Okay, so before I do that, I'm gonna pitch the Business and Economic Forum. So tomorrow at 3:00, we'll be discussing Ghana investment and job. Ghana $500 million investment. We're gonna have Mr. Samuel P. Jackson, criminal Liberia economist, and Mr. Amara, Edward Amara from Sierra Leone, our Freetown correspondent, will be on the show tomorrow, and we'll be discussing that. And for the water cooler moment, we're going to go in and we're going to look at the presidential budget, and we're going to look at where that First Lady line item is. And so I'm going to do a lot of homework tonight, and tomorrow we'll talk about it as a water cooler. So again, I think this is a great discussion, and all the participants, and it was a great debate. It's clear that I can see bias, and my two friends here, I don't know whose side to go on, but it's very clear that they are speaking like lawyers, okay? Where they know the person committed a crime, but their job is to defend them, and so it just depends on what side you are. So I mean, it's hard to say who was right or wrong. It depends on, it's like a glass half full, or half empty. You can make a case for the president, you can make a case against the president. But I think it's healthy for people to just discuss the issue and clear it out, and people to call in and participate. And it's better than fighting. It's better than going to the streets and cursing each other. Something I do very often, which I got to change this year. But it's a good thing for us to discuss in a civil way and disagree. So I think I don't have a clear analysis, Dennis. I mean, this one here is these two people are giants in their own right. So I can't say who's the winner tonight.
Thank you, but I'll tell you the winner in a minute. But let me bring in my man, Moel District. Gagon Moel still want to talk something. So Gagon, you have 45 seconds.
45 seconds. Thank you.
Right.
And I mean, I was just calling. I think Ben Sanvi, he articulated my point. I was gonna ask a question about whether there is a statute that established that office. But we all know from following Liberian body politics, there is no statute, so that office is in clear violation of the law. So we can even put that in court. In that office, every fund that was issued on our budget item on that line, we can put a halt to that because that office is in error because it wasn't established by a statute. So now, in terms of comparing the U.S. to Liberia, yes, arguably that office should fall in there's no office of First Lady in there's no escrow funding for it. It falls under the West Wing with the White House, but it's under the presidential affair. The same thing applies in Liberia. So the fact that Liberian senator allow that.
Go ahead. So ask your question. Gagon. All right. Let's go back and conclude this thing. Gentlemen, it's been a wonderful discussion using this style. I think our viewers enjoy it. Tomorrow we're coming with debate again. The opposition ladies versus the pro-government ladies, and they're going to be right here at 7 p.m. But to conclude the argument, I know we discussed, we covered a lot of ground, and the issue on Henry Costa was the most contentious. So let me get your parting words. And based on the back and forth, I know that there are some areas you want to give up and some areas you want to still be firm on. So I start with you, Dr. Kulah, Mr. Kunney, and then Mr. Jones will conclude. Dr. Kulah, your final comments, and who you think won the debate?
I'll give the debates to Kunney. He won because he.
Oh wow! What a statement.
But I stand with the truth, and the truth always wins. So let me just say this: that the Liberian government has had misstep after misstep after misstep. Some of their own making, unforced errors, as you say in tennis. In this particular situation, they took a simple laissez-passer case and turned it into an international saga where Henry Costa's profile was raised and George Weah's profile was diminished, where the human rights community got involved. The president of Sierra Leone, Mada Bio, looked very good. And at the end of the day, those who stand for democracy and the rights of human beings all over the world were pleased that Henry made it to the United States. Now, Henry has posed a challenge to the Liberian government that he fled his country for fear of his life, but in May, he's going to go back. It is incumbent upon the Liberian government to think things through and decide what you're going to do. Because here's a man that left his country in the midst of an investigation where he had already given a statement and given you all the documents you needed. And I felt that you were supposed to do your internal control investigation to find out who in your offices stamped that laissez-passer, which you say is valid, and who signed it. That's your responsibility, not Henry's. Now your information minister has gone out and said that Henry is being charged for fraud and he's a fugitive and that he caused insurrection. My question to him is where and when? Because both of Henry's protests that he led were peaceful protests calling on his government to come a little higher, to do better by its people, to treat its people right. The same thing that Henry said is the same thing that Moba Molu said. But because Moba Molu is chairman of CDC, and according to Kunney, because they calculate their political calculations, it's okay to reach out to Moba Molu and say, oh, that was just liquor talk. Let's make peace. But it's not okay to reach out to your other citizens who didn't vote for you or who might see you a little different. And to those Liberians that say that Weah is being treated this way because he's not Congo or because he's country or because he's from Gibraltar or because he's one of those that are not supposed to be president, well, Weah has checked off all the boxes to be one of those that should be president. He's a Mason, he's a Freemason, and all his Masonic brothers are around him. He's a rich guy. According to y'all say he got $85 million in the bank somewhere. He's been exposed to that elitist life. So to keep using these excuses won't work. What people want Weah to do is to be a better president, to obey our laws, to do the right thing. And if he does that, he won't get the kind of scrutiny that he's getting right now. But until then, he will continue to.
Thank you.
So one last thing before I leave. Mr. Kunney, regarding the vice president and the president, everything does not have to be an all or nothing with you. You don't have to say that when people raise the issue that there's tension between the president and his vice president, that means there's doom and gloom or everything going to helter-skelter. No, there can be tension between the people and we can see the tension. It's palpable. You can cut it with a knife. But that doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. Yes, there's conflicts within governments. There's conflicts within institutions. But this conflict has spelled out to the world, to where the vice president is complaining, to where other people are complaining. It hasn't been contained.
Thank you.
The president hasn't treated it maturely. And so we need to talk about it. We need to admit it. We need to acknowledge it and do something about it. So those of y'all who are for the president, ask him to treat his vice president right.
Thank you, Dr. Kulah. Mr. Kunney, your final words.
You know, I'm going to take a totally different path. Dr. Kulah is so much focused on the petty, personal.
And hold on. You should also tell us who won the debate, and we want for our viewers to chime in and tell us who won the debate. Is it Kulah or Dr. Kulah?
I said Dr. Kulah is always heavy on the personal and on some of the petty stuff that, you know, that he feels are, you know, important to him. But for me, I take a much more bigger view. I believe that our democracy is struggling, but it is working. The democracy is struggling, but it is working. And we as Liberians, it is our responsibility to make the democracy better. There is no society that is problem-free. There is no government that is tension-free. To make all these demands on a brand new democracy is just, in my opinion, sometimes very much unrealistic. We have to adopt a long view to our country to improve governance in the country. And governance in the country is not the president alone. And most of the emphasis here that I hear when I come on the show is president. We want to do away with the imperial presidency. So we should look to creating other avenues of power in our country that will resolve our issues. The legislature, all of these areas are important. But more so, Dennis, we have to adopt a new mentality. Everything in our country, I recognize that the political system is the dominant institution in our country, but everything don't have to be decided by the political system. Let us also try to discover the innovative spirit of Liberians to solve problems. You know, it is easy to point to problems. It is easy to criticize. But what is wrong with our innovative spirit as Liberians to go to provide answers to some of our questions? Every now and then we point to the feces that are bursting to water side. Every day we complain that we don't have meal-to-meal delivery system. What has happened to private innovation that drive, real national problems? And these are the lessons that we have to learn here, because some of the most successful things here are driven by private people. We have to, at some point, de-emphasize politics and power and focus on the innovative spirit of the Liberian people. And we got to also stop selling this notion that there is some ready-made army of international people that will rescue our country. Let us all jealously guard our peace in the country. And let us take our issues to the political process. I'm not here to be a defender of everything that the government has done. My only plea is that if you think the government has failed or the government is failing, let us use the ballot box to improve our governance system. Take all of that. Those are all, important campaign materials. But this constant disruption of the lives of the Liberian people, under this guise of, there is this right, there is that right. There is not one right in the Constitution. The rights in the Constitution, if you read it, it goes from corner to corner. Okay. But we have an obligation to keep our country peaceful, because most of the things that we want will obtain there in a peaceful environment. My greatest fear is for Liberia not to slap back. And the way we will not slap back is to educate our people, is to conscientize our people, is to do all of these things that make our people aware of the democratic space that we have. As to who won the debate tonight, I hope the Liberian people win. I hope each time we discuss something here, somebody hears something new. Somebody here discover something new. Somebody here come up with a new way of thinking. Because as I said, you cannot change Liberia if you don't change minds. So I'm not into the pettiness of, who get more attention, who is more grandiose. These are all sentimental things. They don't solve the problem of Liberia. How is the extreme popularity of Henry Costa solve the bread and butter issue in Liberia? How is the extreme popularity of President Weah solve the bread and butter issue in Liberia? This is where my concern is.
Please conclude. I want to be fair.
So what I'm saying is the winner, I hope the winner for these exchanges will be the Liberian people, that they will learn something new, that they will also criticize us to know our shortfall, our shortcoming, so that we can also learn from their evaluation of us, with the hope that eventually we will improve our discourse, and then we can develop a national consensus to move our country forward in peace and in security. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alice Jones, you
Good
listen
TV
to the
moment.
all, and you are very noted for your very direct, calling out people and calling spade a spade. Come on now.
Okay, so I can tell you, I can tell you who won the debate today, but I will say who didn't win the debate today. Okay, Ben Sandy did not win the debate today. Dr. Kulah did not win the debate today. Mr. Kunney did not win the debate today. The winner of the debate today is Dennis Zah and Alice Joe. I will tell you why. I will tell you why. I will tell you why, because we are the most innovative people. These people talk about innovation, but they support an imperialist presidency. What is Ben Saint-V? Is Henry Costa? Is George Weah? But then they want that presidency to deliver innovation. Well, I didn't say no. I don't care about the presidency. Let's come together and let's create business and let's create media, and we can talk about it, and we can solve our problems, and we can educate, and we can conscientize, and so forth and so on. So we are the winner today. So we want our focus on your T-shirt. But again, Mr. Saint-V, if you want to come on to debate that issue, like I said, no more Liberian presidency. Let's think innovation. Let's come to the table and create something new. And again, you struck me with these two people, Dr. Kulah and Dr. Kunney. I don't know how we're supposed to set up a working group with these two people that so far right and left.
It makes for a good TV moment, though.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen. It's been a wonderful show. And Alex, I was asking for winners. You took it too far.
We won. That's the end of the story. Tomorrow, come on the business economic forum.
So I want to thank you all so much. Tomorrow at 3 will be our business and economic forum, and we're going to be discussing the Ghana 500 Fortune 500 initiative. So please come, and what can we learn from the Ghana initiative? Also at 7, we're going to have the opposition ladies coming and presenting their issues, holding the government accountable. Then we had the pro-government ladies coming to say, the president, the government has been doing excellent. This time we are bringing the two of them together to argue out their points at 7 p.m. You sure don't want to miss this. Thank you so much for watching, and continue to support us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We want to get that numbers. Share the video, encourage others. We don't have all the ideas. We need people to come, partner with us. Let's build something bigger than CNN. Come, let's inform, educate, and promote all things Liberia. Liberia is the only country we have, and there's no Messiah who's going to fix it for us. There is no need for us to trust anyone to do it for us. It's we ourselves. Being there someone from the diaspora, being there someone from the southeastern Liberia, nothing Liberia, being there someone who is from the Congo or the American Liberian stock, or someone from the native, or someone who has come from Guinea or Sierra Leone or Liberia that has joined or that has migrated to Liberia. It's all of us as one group, as Dr. Sawyer said. You know, I hate to quote people outside Liberia. So when I'm quoting, I quote Dr. Sawyer. He said Liberia is a mosaic. When I'm quoting, I quote Mr. Tubman, who said, it is not the Constitution that failed the Liberian people. Rather, it is the Liberian people that failed to honor and observe what is being laid down in that Constitution. I quote the senior family who's talking about the cows, the white cow. I quote Dr. Sawyer, who said history and God and posterity will judge us if we don't do these things. So guys, let us do our best to keep Liberia the only country on planet Earth that we
Liberia people.
Thanks to all our viewers for watching. My name is Dennis John, bidding you a pleasant good night.